Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, October 16th, 2024, and this is the meeting of the school committee. It is 6:30 p.m. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being broadcast at a later date over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. The meeting will be broadcast at a later date through the local access cable channel and on the public access Facebook page, and will be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise if you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I'll open up to public comment from the public. Seeing none, I'll open up to public comment from the committee. Ms. Archambault?
I just wanted to take a minute to thank Evan Waters for his time on the Finance Committee. His leadership was invaluable for putting together our override last spring. He thinks outside the box. He is careful about what he does and very committed. And I wish to thank him very, very much for the time he spent on the board.
Ms. Brzezowski?
I wanted to take a minute to thank our retiring police chief, Chief Gamble, whose last day is on Friday. And I guess Friday is going to be Chief Gamble Day in Lunenburg. So I just wanted to take a minute and say thank you and appreciate all he did, especially for the schools, because he always put school safety and the safety of the kids as a priority. That was appreciated. So.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I have a few items. On October 8th, I had a follow-up with Representative Scarsdale on the Chapter 70 funding. There was a Zoom with the 211 regional schools and other schools that were in hold harmless. So I attended, as well as Tom Gray from Finance was their representative. The next step, there's a lot of information given about where a lot of the districts fell. They gave a lot of examples. I will forward the presentation slides to the superintendent, who can give it to the members. Also an Excel document of a potential bill for January. So the next steps is really the January bills. There was a specific Senate bill mentioned, Senate Bill 303, that would potentially help a lot of the districts. It was nice seeing that it wasn't just a transportation thing or just a regional school bill, but it was actually a bill to change the contribution rate by 5% to make the state contribute more. So it would adjust it from 41 to 46%, and it would not help the towns who were already capped at the 82.5%. So more to come on that, and I'll forward that information to the superintendent, who can disperse that information so you can take a look at it before we make any committee decisions. The Finance Committee, Appointing Committee, will be meeting next week to appoint at least one person, potentially. So try to get the Finance Committee a few more members. There's still people looking for, the Finance Committee is still looking for people who are interested in joining, so there's multiple seats available. I also wanted to congratulate Chief Gamble as well on his retirement and thank him for his service also to the schools and the strong relationship with the schools and making sure that our children are safe. I also want to congratulate Interim Chief Thibodeau as well, and I look forward to having him work with the schools as well. The North Middlesex superintendent reached out to me talking potentially about sharing resources. We have in the past done professional development with North Middlesex, and he was looking for other opportunities to share resources. So I gave him permission to talk to the superintendent and see if we can find ways to save both districts money and sharing resources. And I even gave him the example of facilities, that sometimes it just doesn't work to share resources, that it's at least worth exploring, and that we'll explore those opportunities. Also, the homecoming parade is coming up this weekend, and I also got the invite from Tatum. And that was all I had. Next up was the student representatives report. She's online. All right, next item on the agenda is review and approve minutes. We have regular session minutes from September 18th, 2024. Were there any questions, comments, or feedback? All right, look for a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, September 18th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, can we get a roll call vote?
Mrs. Brzezowski?
Yes.
Mr. Beardmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Ashambo?
Yes,
Mr. Laitman?
And abstain.
And Mr. Schoenbrini? Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Scullenbrady? Please know if the audio's working too.
Somebody ask him?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Can people on Zoom hear us?
The Lindbergh participant appears to be muted.
That we appear to
No.
be muted?
No.
We're not?
No, Tony says he can't hear
Yeah,
us.
we appear to be muted on the screen.
Okay, so he can't hear us.
There we go.
Can you hear us now?
There we go.
Tony, can you hear us now? Thank you.
You want me to do a motion again?
No, so we have a motion on the floor, and we're going through the motion is to approve the regular session minutes of September 18th, 2024. There was also a second. We're doing a roll call vote, and it is up to you, Mr. Scullenbrady.
I say yes.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is to review and approve line item transfers, warrants, and donations.
We have several this
Several.
evening. So first up, we'll take the line item transfer. This is a request coming from the high school, requesting to transfer $1,100 from the office supply line to the phys ed supply line. This is to be able to renew a subscription for software for the phys ed department.
Were there any questions, comments from the committee?
What kind of software does the phys ed department use? I'm just curious.
There's a new health PE curriculum, and so that will support.
Do you mind coming up to the microphone?
Sure.
Thanks.
There's a new health curriculum, a health PE curriculum, so it's the software is supposed to help institute the new standards. So that's the reason. Any questions?
Yeah, just for clarification, we did not adopt a new curriculum, there are new state curriculum standards.
Right.
And this is a resource for the
To make that
alignment.
alignment.
There are new state curriculum standards for phys ed.
Health and
And
PE.
Health and PE, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Could somebody send us some information on that at some point? I wasn't aware of that.
I could send you a link,
Yeah,
Lucas could send you a link, if, you know.
Like to Burnham be able to get us that information?
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And donations, we have two, both to the athletic department. So I'd invite our athletic director, Mr. Bigelow, to the table.
I was gonna say, can we get a motion to approve the line item transfer?
I would move to approve the line item transfer as described.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Schoenbrini,
Yes.
Mrs. Brzezowski,
Yes.
Mr. Beardmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes.
and Mr. Leighton.
Yes.
All right, so
All
turn
right,
it over
Mr.
to
Bigelow.
RIT.
Yes. I think I got it working. I have two donations. The first is from the Sozik Foundation. And they have requested that we earmark this money, $1,200, something that will benefit all athletes. And what we've gone with was a brush for the turf field to maintain it. Came in at $1,100 and change, and that's what we're looking to purchase with that donation.
What questions do the committee have? Comments?
Good idea.
The second is part of the T-Mobile contest that we entered, which the grand prize was for new turf fields, upgraded renovations, all sorts of bells and whistles, but unfortunately, we did not win the grand prize. However, we were selected, 300 schools across the country were selected for a $5,000 grant. So we were selected for that. We have a representative from T-Mobile coming, and hopefully this doesn't spoil it too much, but at the homecoming rally and presenting a check, and I would invite anybody on the school committee if you would like to come and receive that, and that'd be wonderful.
When is it? Is it?
He's bringing like a big, like giant,
Oh, when's
like
the-
Giant check.
$5,000.
Friday, right? Friday?
Yes, yeah,
Is it during the school day?
During the
Yeah.
school day?
last period, so,
1:30, was it?
yeah, yeah.
I can try and go if you need to.
I can't make it.
Well, yeah, I figured. I can try and go if you
Sounded
need
like
to
fun.
go.
Yeah, if you want, that'd be great.
Okay.
Motion to approve both donations?
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think this is,
Appreciate it.
Good job.
Is there a place
That's
where we
impressive.
can read what you wrote? I'm just,
Yeah, I sent it in,
I think it was in the email.
Probably should have been, right?
yeah, she sent out
I
an email. I
think
just-
Liz probably
Yes.
circulated, yeah.
yeah. I think this is a great example of as if every department does this and we're looking to keep increasing the funding for the schools is a great way to keep helping out the students and the student athletes as well. So, thank you. All right,
Thanks.
I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Okay. Mr. Schoenbrini,
Yes.
Mrs. Brzezowski,
Yes?
Mr. Beardmore,
Yes.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes.
and Mr. Leighton.
Yes, thank you. All right, and that is all our line item transfers and donations.
Yes.
And the warrants from October 1st to October 9th totaled $361,064.94. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. First, let me provide an update on a medical emergency that occurred at the October 4th football game here at the high school. One of our coaches collapsed on the sideline at that game. Last week, the district safety team met and debriefed the event. Present at that meeting were our school administrators, our athletic director, both the police and fire chief, the police and fire lieutenants, the school resource officers, and fire captain. It was determined at that meeting that the school department, police department, and fire department would do the following in collaboration. So the fire department staff, the school and coaching staff, they are all being reminded that the gate closest to the bleacher side of the field is the only gate that can accommodate an ambulance, and that gate needs to be kept clear and accessible at all times. In a medical emergency, we will be assigning someone, either the detail officer or school staff, to be stationed at the gate in order to guide EMS personnel. We'll also be placing a sign on that gate as an ambulance access so that there is no mistaking which gate is to be used, and to alert those in attendance to keep that area clear. And we'll make sure that all gates are unlocked prior to the start of the game. The police department will be providing no parking horses that the school staff can put out for games to prevent parking in the areas of concern where we frequently have people parking where they should not be parking. The athletic director will have the buses for the visiting team park at the Turkey Hill Elementary School parking lot after the athletes are dropped off at the game field. The fire chief reports that while the illegal parking did not negatively impact patient care in this situation, we all agree that parking will be enforced moving forward as not to be an impediment in the future. And we discussed the protocol for reporting a medical emergency, and both chiefs agreed that the best route was to use a phone and call 911. It's important to note that the athletic department has 2 AEDs. There is always one on the sideline at the game. It's also important to note that we have a doctor and a trainer and a detail officer at the games. And I can report that the coach is doing well. So again, I would like to thank the members of the fire department and police department that attended that district safety team meeting to debrief the incident so that we could make some adjustments to ensure that moving forward we can avoid any potential impediments to quick response. November 5th is a professional development day, and we will be collaborating with North Middlesex Regional School District on that particular day. This day will be a conference day, and it will be hosted by North Middlesex. And the day will include a keynote and opportunities for our staff to select from a variety of breakout sessions. At this point, we already have 26 different breakout sessions that staff will be able to choose from, and we're still adding. The keynote speaker is Dr. Erin Nerlino, and her presentation is entitled Bystander Training. Dr. Nerlino is currently in her 11th year teaching high school English language arts in a public regional high school in the Northeast. She earned her doctorate in curriculum and teaching from Boston University and was selected as a 2024 Massachusetts Teacher of the Year semifinalist. Her keynote will focus on thinking through potential strategies for onlookers to use directly or indirectly to interrupt a situation involving harassment. She works to empower student voices and will include former students in her keynote presentation. The breakout sessions will be facilitated by outside consultants and staff members from both school districts. A key area of focus for this professional development day is around creating safe, caring, and inclusive learning environments. However, we will also have a range of offerings to ensure that we are meeting all staff members' needs. I'd like to also make you all aware that Dr. Beth Ann Cormier, the assistant principal for Turkey Hill Elementary School, finally started with us this week, and we
Yay.
are thrilled to have her on board. So welcome, Dr. Cormier. An update relative to the Director of Facilities and Grounds position. We conducted interviews last week and have made an offer, and we are awaiting a response from that candidate. Follow up to the information that the chair provided. I will be having a meeting with the superintendent of North Middlesex when we are on their campus on November 5th to talk about the potential for collaboration. An update relative to the Turkey Hill ADA study. Proposals were due today at 2 p.m. We received 7 proposals. If any member of the school committee is interested in reviewing the bids and helping to make the selection of the firm that will conduct the study, please send me an email and we'll coordinate times. The Finance Committee will be reviewing warrant articles at their meeting next week, and the interim town manager has asked department heads to provide information relative to a variety of questions connected to different warrant articles. We have been asked to provide information relative to how we would spend the additional Chapter 70 monies that we are requesting. Calendar reminders. School committee meetings. Next will be November 6th, 6:30, hybrid from Town Hall. November 20th, 6:30, hybrid from the middle high school. A reminder that special town meeting will be Tuesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. at the middle high school in the auditorium. And again, for families who are interested, the warrant article will be voted at special town meeting. That warrant article requesting the additional Chapter 70 money.
It's Article 2. So
Article
quick.
2.
Yeah.
A reminder that the middle high school parent-teacher conferences are coming up next week as well. There's an early release day on Tuesday, October 22nd, for the afternoon parent conferences, and evening conferences will be held on Thursday evening. A reminder for families, schools are closed on November 5th, as that is the full-day professional development day for all staff. And we're all going to talk about homecoming because it's the best day all year. The float parade is this Saturday, starting at noon. We leave from the Turkey Hill Elementary School parking lot. The Lions Club will be holding their cookout immediately following the parade, and the game against Clinton begins at 1:30. And then some other fun things that are going on in the community this time of year. Shrieks and Creeks, the Boys and Girls Club, will be Friday, October 18th, 6:30 to 9:30. Miles for Miles, the road race, will be Sunday, October 20th. The fun run starts at 9 a.m. and the 5K starts at 9:30. And all of these races will begin at the middle high school. And the race is being sponsored by the Cross Country Boosters. And Trunk or Treat, Saturday, October 26th, from 12 to 3 in the middle school, the middle high school parking lot. And that is hosted by the Lunenburg Business Association. And I too would like to add my congratulations to Chief Gamble on his retirement. I will miss working with him very much. He's been a tremendous partner to the schools. We wouldn't have 2 SROs in our schools without that partnership. So I'm very, very grateful to him for the collaborative way in which we've worked for many years at this point. And I wish him well in his next adventure.
Thank you. There was a lot there. What questions, comments do the committee members have?
I like that you said what, not any.
Yeah, Mr. Brzezowski.
Okay, you said the gate for ambulances will be kept clear in regards to football games going forward? Is it gonna be just football games or all,
Anything at the turf.
anything at the turf field?
Yep, we're gonna mark that gate as an ambulance access.
How are we gonna keep it clean, or how are we gonna keep it clear if somebody parks there despite the signs?
The officer that's on detail should be
Okay.
enforcing the parking in
Okay.
that area.
So the police will be doing that, okay. And you said the athletic department has 2 AEDs, where
Yes.
are they kept?
There's one that's always in the field house. I'm not sure where the second one is kept. It may also just be stored in the field house. But we have 2 because sometimes there are multiple games going on the campus at the same time. There might be a competition on the grass fields as well as on the turf field. That's why we have 2, so that they can be located at each of the games.
Okay, I was very happy to hear it was right there.
Yep.
When it was.
Yep. And
Perhaps
just
needed.
as an aside, it may help to know that the trainer and the AD periodically go through scenarios so that they sort of anticipate and try to plan for how to address any situation that comes up. So I thank them for that work on an ongoing basis.
And my last question is, who's the parade marshal for the homecoming parade?
Mr. Santry, parade marshal?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Nor do I. I don't think it was announced. I guess it
Usually
would be
announced
at the
meant to
rally.
be-
It's-
Oh, at the
Oh,
rally?
At the rally.
The rally.
Can't
Can't
pull
disclose
back the
that.
Okay.
curtain yet.
Sorry. it's confidential. Okay, that's it for me.
Any other, Mr. Beardmore?
So I was the school committee member that raised concerns pertaining to the event at the game. And I want to thank the superintendent, the administration, and the safety committee for thoroughly reviewing my email, which I'd be glad to share with anybody, but it's mostly synopsized in this document that the superintendent put together. I view this as a very good learning event, and I think we're taking the right actions as a result of that. That being said, I overheard concerns relating to this issue at the game the week before that involved members of our staff. And I would like to ask that it be made clear, and we may need to even make a policy around this, that if there is a legitimate safety concern that a member of the staff has, that concern can be escalated and elevated to whomever, whenever, and that they are empowered to take action. Because I don't know that that was clearly understood in the week prior. Again, I'm not directing that, but I'm asking that that be given some consideration. The second question that I have that wasn't clear to me, and I had followed up in an email to you, Dr. Burnham, yesterday. At last week's football game, the area where the ambulance would come into the field was very clear. And there were people out front, somebody making sure that people weren't parking there. But the upper entrance by the field house that accesses the fire road that goes around this building was not clear. And people do tend to park there, particularly people who are involved in fundraisers, selling swag, or working in the snack shack or that sort of thing. But that is an equal concern, right? If a spectator, my elderly parents attend football games, if a spectator were to be injured, it would be a similar scenario. So I would ask that be given the same level of consideration. That fire road also needs to be kept clear of vehicles.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Can I
Thank
make
you.
one more comment?
Yes, Mr. Brzezowski?
I did want to just point out, it says here that the time from the first 911 call to the ambulance's arrival in the field was 2.5 minutes, so,
That is not true.
no?
Well,
They checked with dispatch.
I Okay, oh, we have video. I mean, we can go back and watch it, but I do not believe that to be true. And I think that there was probably at least 5 minutes between when the ambulance arrived and when it made its way onto the field, which is what led to my addressing these issues. So I don't believe that the response time is accurately reflected here. And you know, I mean, frankly, there was a lot of discussion in the crowd about the amount of time that this whole thing took. And these are high visibility events, and fortunately, it was a good opportunity to learn, and everybody's okay.
Right.
But it was certainly not my, or I think most people in the crowd that night, our observation that that ambulance was available and rendering care in a amount of time that we have been led to believe that we can normally respond to emergencies on our property.
Thank you. Ms. Ashenbaum?
I don't have anything.
So the only thing I was talking to Carol about too was the finance committee's request of how we're gonna spend the additional chapter 70 funds. So maybe this would be a good point, because the superintendent brought it up, that we could have that discussion. If they're looking for a specific line item,
And they are.
and they are from the
What did we indicate in the original letter that we made the request? Was there any specificity in that letter?
I
It wasn't to a line item, but it was just that it was sent to the schools. But I
Yeah.
think it did say administrative.
Well, let's see what it said.
Yeah, let's see if I can find
There
it.
was one comment from one finance committee member that stated that just because it's chapter 70 funds doesn't mean it was meant for the school.
Huh.
So I think we
Hmm.
have to provide some kind of
Justification.
justification, and I will be at the meeting. I don't mind giving the justification as directed by the chair, as I don't speak for the committee.
So in light of ongoing hiring challenges faced by Superintendent Burnham, these additional funds though not extensive, could significantly help in addressing pressing needs within our school system. Ensuring that our schools have the necessary resources is crucial for maintaining the high standard of education that our children deserve.
We could just
Yeah.
read that.
Yeah, it doesn't say a specific administration or salaries or anything like that.
I'm confused. The chapter 70 money is supposed to go to school. I'm just,
But
But we passed our budget
yeah.
with the dollar amount. And
There's a
now
lot of
that the
different
chapter
ways to
70
look at
funds
it.
have adjusted, this would be additional money towards our budget that had already been passed at a specific dollar
Okay.
amount. That's
Yeah.
what they'll
Okay.
argue.
that's the
That our budget has
that's
been
the
passed.
concern.
Yeah, so we're now getting additional funds, potentially getting additional funds on top of our budget.
How much is it? 300?
It's
$31,882.
Yep.
It's 31,000?
Yeah.
So do we want it for the kids, or just
Yes, I would love
let the town figure out a way that they could spend it not on the students? So we can also not give a reason, we could read the letter again, or we could also give a specific line item or area.
When do they need this by?
The
At
next
the 24th of October.
next
So
Thursday,
not our next meeting, okay.
So
their next meeting. If we want to be specific, we could talk about the challenges with hiring a facilities director, that it is going to be challenging to hire at the same salary, that inflation is affecting salaries, that we also have para contracts, teacher contracts going through.
Oh, that's exactly what,
there was a discussion at the finance committee meeting about an article that the town manager is submitting, interim town manager, about retaining employees and the need to do more for our employees. So I think there is a fair amount of understanding that everybody's underpaid. So, from listening to that conversation, I think we probably would be okay with the statement regarding the monies will be put we could say into our salary reserve account so that we can hire someone of good quality, or we can spend it on our paras, or however you want to phrase it.
I would agree with that. My thought is, yeah, in that line item of salary reserve, and mention specifically that a portion of it will be going towards a facilities director, even though I know they're not big fans of the facility director, independent to the
Higher.
schools, but
But
I agree.
Mr.
what do you
Beardmore?
think, Peter? You know more about them.
I mean, I think that at a high level, superintendent, the business director, the vice chair who serves as the chair of the special budget committee have made the case in great detail that we have compensation gaps relative to our competition in the market for hiring and retaining employees. And I think that the facilities director is a good example of a scenario where we need to hire somebody who is an experienced and competent and confident manager and leader. And part of that experience needs to come from the facilities and building trades industries. And the incumbent, I believe, the published salary is about $110,000 for that position. And anybody in their right mind who thinks that we are going to be able to hire what we're looking for and what I believe we need for $110,000, if they believe that, they shouldn't be making financial decisions, in my view. And this has nothing to do with relative to what we pay anybody else for any other position. I understand there are terrible inequities in the market relative to discipline and industries, but we need to hire somebody who is extremely competent and well-experienced in that space. And that is not an adequate salary to attract somebody that, of the level that we're looking for, in my opinion, Peter Beardmore's opinion. But you can certainly reflect that to the members of the committee, or perhaps I can help you do that if you'd like. But it's not just that position. I mean, this is a pervasive issue that we are dealing with across the board. We ran into it. I was part of the negotiating team with Laura for the paraprofessionals. We are using part of the salary reserve fund to fund that contract. We have another unresolved contract at this point. We need that money to hire and retain competent professionals.
So what I can do also, I can reach out to the chair of the finance committee and the interim town manager, and then if you're present at the meeting, I'm fine with you talking to Carol, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I can do that. There's no reason for you to come out, or Dr. Burnham to come out to answer that one question. That's silly. I can take care of it at the finance committee meeting.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Yes, Mr. Beardmore?
I also have to comment, and I did not watch the tape. I don't know who the member was that made the comment around the Chapter 70 money.
I think it's new and different. We've never done it before, so I think it was a surprise to them. They were like, oh, what's this? Why are they asking for Chapter 70 funding?
But Chapter 70 money is a reflection of the needs of the school department.
Right.
It would not exist
Thank you.
without a school, without schools, right? I mean, the purpose of Chapter 70 is to support education. I don't have the Mass General Law sitting in front of me, but I would venture to guess that what I just said is a pretty good
Yeah.
paraphrase of the first paragraph of that statute. So I don't know that that's sound logic.
I would agree.
Mr. Scullambrini?
So, I want to make the point that the idea that the money would be allocated to something different other than education seems to be a little bit of a slap in the face to the town of Lunenburg that last fall or last spring voted for an override because they understood that the school's budget was perilously thin. So I think that, we have to listen to the will of the voters that have already made it clear that the money that we get isn't enough and we're going to give us some extra in the form of the override. So to the extent that we are here as elected officials representing the populace, I think we're obligated to tell the finance committee and the rest of the town that chapter 70 money should go back to the schools because that's what the voters have clearly and definitively voiced their opinion on by passing the override.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this?
I would also, I would also make the argument that the reason there was an increase in Chapter 70 funding was the state budget recognized an increased need in school costs, and that is why there was a slight increase in the Chapter 70 money. It was in response to needs specifically for school departments, and we have increased costs, so the money was meant to go to the school department. But it's the will of the voters.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna belabor this.
No,
I could
no.
give you, I could cite chapter and verse of other examples where we wouldn't even consider taking, what is effectively earmarked money and putting it
Right.
someplace else.
Right.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is presentations. Do we have any presentations tonight?
No presentations.
So next item is new business, action item, assessment report.
So I would invite Dr. Bookus and Ms. Resnick and Ms. Canton to the table. So Dr. Deborah Bookus is our Director of Teaching and Learning, and Amy Resnick is our math specialist instructional coach. And Lisa Canton is our new literacy specialist instructional coach.
All right. So Kate brings up our slides. Just say good evening and thank you for giving us this opportunity to share some of the highlights from the fall assessment report with you. Just to start off, MCAS is the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's monitoring tool. It's to monitor the system, the school system. It's designed to tell us how well we're serving our students, what level of support the state can offer as we serve our students, and then to be able to communicate those results to the general public. Internally, the data helps us identify any strengths and weaknesses we might have in our curriculum and in our instruction. It also helps us fine-tune our curriculum with the Massachusetts frameworks, commonly referred to as the state standards. One of the things that, move on to the next slide, Kate, thanks. One of the things that the Department of Ed cautions us to do, though, is not to make too many comparisons to other districts, as there are
Excuse me.
variations.
Excuse me for interrupting. Dr. Burnham, could you share the slides on the Zoom?
So I've been trying, and I understand that they, at Town Hall, have made some adjustments to settings, and I do not have permission to share my screen, unfortunately.
They're in our
They're
folder
in
that
the
got
folder.
added this afternoon.
Yeah, I just put the people on the Zoom. Okay.
Okay. Because districts, as we were just talking about, have different unique structures in place, different financial resources, and also some different needs. So on to the next slide. Thanks, Kate. Your report goes into further detail about the accountability system and about the different components that make up the accountability system. So it also states the highlights and the areas of improvement for all of the schools and for the district. This particular slide, though, shows the two critical components. There's a normative component and a criterion referenced component. The normative component is a bit of that comparison to other like schools in the Commonwealth. The criterion referenced component tells us about our progress towards our improvement targets, and the Department of Ed sets improvement targets for us every year. The indicators are in the upper right corner, so those are the different pieces that make up those indicators of the accountability system. And then in the bottom right is the categorization of the schools that ultimately results from the accountability system. And you'll see the yellow arrow is where the Lunenburg Public Schools is right now, and that's making substantial progress towards our goals. In your report, so next slide, Kate, also provides details about the universal screeners that are used here in Lunenburg Public Schools. So universal screeners are very quick assessments that capture a moment in time about how a student is doing. It might tell us a little bit about a student's achievement levels and their assets, or where they might need some additional support. And that support can vary by intensity, like how often, or by the size of the group, as well as the duration, how long a student might need some support. So I like to liken universal screeners to like going to the eye doctor and reading off the wall, and there might be a red flag that's raised, something that they notice that needs to be checked further. So you might need to get some additional information, you might need to look a little bit more closely, look further into doing some more assessments. So universal screeners are, again, those quick assessments that give us a preview of what we might need to look into. The report that you have also discusses the different types of data that's used in schools. The data that's in your report that was analyzed all pertain to what we call satellite data. And we go into detail what satellite data is. But even within that category, and you'll see in the left column, the 4 that are highlighted, not all satellite data is the same. So for example, with MCAS this year for grades K through 8, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education did not release any of the questions. So we don't actually get to see the questions that students were asked. We know what standards they're aligned to, but we don't get to see the questions. So it's a little bit harder to understand sort of what students were asked and how we can make adjustments. The same thing with the iReady assessment. Because it's an adaptive assessment, every student gets different questions. We don't see the questions that students get asked. So it's a much more general assessment in that way. DIBELS, on the other hand, and that's why it's actually in both columns, both in the satellite column and the map column. With DIBELS, it's a one-on-one interview with the student. We know the questions that we asked. We can hear their responses, see their responses, take notes as they're responding to the questions. So it gives us that little bit more information to make instructional decisions. What I wanted you to see is that this chart provides a visual representation of all the different kinds of data that educators use in schools to make instructional decisions for our students and to support them. Now I'll turn to MCAS on the next slide. And for ELA, for English Language Arts, the chart on the left shows that grades 3, 6, 7, and 10, the English Language Arts results were above the state average. In grades 4, 5, and 8, they were about 3 to 4% below the state average. The chart on the right shows the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations by grade span, and here in Lunenburg, that's also by school, for the past 5 years compared to the state average. These numbers represent different groups of students each year. 2021 is not considered a comparable year because the state created a modified assessment as we were coming out of COVID. And of course, there was no state testing in 2020, which is why there isn't a column there for 2020. Across the Commonwealth, the ELA results showed lower achievement in all grades for this past year. Grades 6 through 8 and grade 10 for Lunenburg are trending slightly higher than the state. Next slide for math. Again, the chart on the left shows that in all grades, except for 4 and 5, the math results were above the state average. For grades 4 and 5, they were right at state average, 40 and 46. The chart on the right shows the percentage again of students meeting or exceeding expectations by grade span or school for the past 5 years compared to the state average. Grades. Yeah, it's not going on. Can I just start yours? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for noticing.
Hello? Better. Grades 6 through 8 and 10 are well above the state average, and grade 3 through 5 has been trending in an upward direction such that we are now above state average this past year. The next slide for science, technology, and engineering. It shows that each grade was above the state average for the percentage of students meeting and exceeding expectations. Again, the chart on the right, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations by grade for the past 5 years compared to the state average. At all grades in 2024, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations is above the state average, and very exciting to see grade 5 increase 15% from 2023. So another way of looking at the results is to look at it by cohort. So this slide shows the achievement by student cohort from 2019 to 2024. Again, there were no tests in 2020. The test in 2021 was modified. And students are not tested in grade 9, right, for ELA or for math. So for example, if we follow the light green shape, students who were in 4th grade in 2019 did not take MCAS in 2020 when they were in the 5th grade. They took a modified version of MCAS in 2021 when they were in 6th grade. In 2022, they were in 7th grade. In 2023, in 8th grade. And this past year, 2024, did not take an MCAS test because they were in 9th grade. Right? And so you can do that for each one of the student grades for each of the years.
Do you
following
have
the
this
color.
chart for science, technology, and engineering?
I don't have it for science, technology, engineering. I could put one together. It's a little bit trickier because of the different years. They only take it in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. But I can show you a side-by-side. That might be helpful. For math, the same thing. Again, the same things apply. There were no tests in 2020. The test in 2021, again, was modified. Students are not tested in grade 9 for math. So another example would be to follow the dark blue shapes. Students were in 3rd grade. In 2021, their very first MCAS test was a modified MCAS test. They were in 4th grade in 2022, 5th grade in 2023, and 6th grade in 2024. The other thing...
Mr. Beardmore?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to, I'm making interpretations of what you're saying as you're saying it and questioning myself and driving myself crazy, so I
Okay.
apologize for interrupting you. A modified test in 2021, meaning 2021 in and of itself is an outlier,
Yes,
not that that was continued in 22, 23, and 24.
exactly right. It was modified. It's not comparable to any of the other tests that came before or after.
Okay, but 2019 to 22 to 23, 24 are all comparable tests?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. So another way, another actually element of MCAS we look at is student growth percentile. So in English language arts, this continues to be in the typical range in Lunenburg. So the typical range is 40 to 60 for student growth percentile, and that's for all grade bands over the past 4 years. The SGP in mathematics continues to be in the typical range, 40 to 60 for grade 10 for the past 4 years. In grades 6 through 8, the mean growth has risen from 33, which at that point was low growth, to 56, so now in the high typical growth. The same is true in grades 3 through 5. The mean growth has risen from 33, low growth, to 56, high typical growth.
When you say risen from, what year was?
So over the 4 years, it was in so the last 4 years, the same figures we were looking at before, earlier, so 2020, 21? Yep. Was 33, was low growth, and is now at 56, high growth, so over the last 4 years. So the next page, the next slide for iReady. The percentage of students on or above grade level in the iReady assessments has been trending upwards. In grades K2, the ELA went from 80 to 85%, and the math has stayed about level, so those are the percentage of students on or above grade level. In grades 3 through 5, ELA and math rose to 72% from 67 and 62% respectively. And in grades 6 through 8, ELA and math both rose to 62 and 63%. One of the things we've talked about as a district, and it's important to note that 8th grade is a very heavily tested grade. They take 4 MCAS, and last year Lunenburg was chosen to also participate in the NAEP assessment, which is the National Assessment of educational progress. That's a lot of testing for students in a short period of time. And so they took the 8th grade iReady at the very end of all of that testing. And we really, as we explored the results, did not really feel it was a true indicator of the growth that the students had made. So this year we made some adjustments. So their last testing period will be, we moved it to February, and that will be the last one for 8th grade before all that other testing. That'll still give us some time to do some intervention and to do some progress monitoring for students who need it, but not to do another whole band of testing for 8th grade. So some areas for improvement, things that we'll be looking at and working on. So some of this comes from the accountability, some of this comes from the actual assessments. We'll be looking at advanced coursework completion at the high school, chronic absenteeism at the high school for students who are in the lowest performing category. Again, really looking at that ELA achievement in grades 3 through 8 for all students. The growth is there, but we need to continue to raise the bar on achievement. Literacy for K2, those foundational skills that hugely impact what happens in grades 3 and above. As a district, we're looking to close the achievement gaps in mathematics and ELA for students with disabilities. We have our special educators and our MTSS specialists and our coaches involved in courses, Dyscalculia for mathematics, which is around math disability, and using the Wilson training program, which is for dyslexia and for reading difficulties. Our special educators have been attending all of the grade level meetings. We call them PLCs, professional learning communities, thank you, at the grade level meetings so that our educators can collaborate together to determine what's best for students. And then as a district and building leaders, we are going to be progress monitoring those groups of students to see their progress throughout the year, to make sure that we're well aware of what's happening. We have individual and small group mathematic challenges being created and have been created for students who may need that extra challenge as we see that our math is improving. We will continue to explore. The Department of Ed is creating new science, technology, and engineering resources, as well as exploring some other new programs. As you read in your report, next year the science MCAS for grades 5 and 8 will be piloted, and then the following year will be a brand new test. So we need to make sure that we are giving our students the experiences they need for that MCAS test. And then we will also continue to monitor the achievement of our students who are learning English. Before I close, I just wanted to comment on the comprehensive health and PE standards. Those were released by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed last year. We are part of, there are 5 of us who are attending the Leaders Network that the department is providing for districts so that we can learn about the new standards, so that we can spend some time this year unpacking them, understanding them, figuring out how they're aligned to what we have, what we don't have. So hopefully when we have more information about it, we'll be able to share that with you. So just want to shout out and thank all of the educators, the staff, school and district leaders who support our students and families every day, and we are happy to take your feedback and answer questions you may have.
What questions or comments do the committee members have? Mr. Beardmore?
Go first.
So, notably, when we look at your cohort comparison, and you just, which is a really good way of laying it out, but then when you look straight across at, let's say, grade 10 for ELA or math for that matter, it would appear, looking at real numbers, that we still are dealing with a 15% COVID loss in terms of real student performance. If you look at 2019 to 2024 performance, I understand it's good that we're above state average, but we're still not where we were 5 years ago. Before I continue, am I reading this correctly, and is that true?
So yes, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations is 10% lower than it was in 2019.
Okay. Has the state, so those are looking at our numbers. Does the state averages reflect a similar gap?
Yes.
between those?
And it has, and this year was particularly stagnant, the results for the state.
Okay. And we went up in ELA at grade 10, year to year. It's, and I understand that there's this cohort mapping, but dropped a little bit in math year to year. Does the state have a get healthy plan? Like, has the state said we are going to, by year 2028, we're going to be back to where we were in 2019, or? I mean, we only have these kids for 12 years, so at what point do we
Yeah, that's not a great
normalize?
question for someone who's got kids right now who are in this. I'm like,
Well, I mean,
They set targets for themselves the same way they set targets for us, and it's just a matter of, are they making their targets in the same way the districts are? So I think I've heard in the conference calls I've been on, comparing to 2019 for COVID, the implications of COVID and how that has impacted teaching and learning, how that's impacted students over the last few years. I mean, when we're still looking at, and they're talking about 2020 was a year we didn't have testing, 2021 was a hybrid year, it's a huge anomaly. 2022, they still talk that beginning of that year, we were still impacted because the new strain came about and we were still distancing, it was still hard to teach, and we were teaching a new math program, and it was a challenge because part of the program is having students turn and talk to each other. Well, it's hard to do when you're 6 feet away. So 23 was really in itself the first real kind of back to normal school year to the extent that we could have had, and then last year was 2024. So yes, I mean, the public health folks talk all the time about how we're going to see this for years, that it's going to take quite a bit of time for us to recover and get back to that. In terms of a grand plan, other than setting targets and all of us working as hard as we can.
okay, that's a good answer. When I reviewed the data that you shared earlier, and by the way, thank you, report was excellent and your presentation was great. I really appreciate it. It was quite notable with respect to students with disabilities that we're underperforming. And I recognize that the school improvement plans and the superintendent's goals and are all seeking to address that. We've prided ourselves in recent years largely in budgetary conversations about managing, to retain as many students and to limit our outplacements. Mostly because outplacements cost inordinate money, and when you move money in an outplacement, it sucks resources from everywhere else in the school department, and it's good financial practice to try to limit those. But I can't help but wondering if, number one, if this presents any level of evidence that some of those students are being underserved as a result of that, or number two, we are artificially penalizing ourselves in our statistics as a result of that. And I recognize the fact that these are probably not the right questions that somebody wants to be a proponent of education in Lunenburg should be asking, but I think these are critical questions that we just kind of have to come to grips with and ask ourselves if that's the reality. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, I think that those are some good questions that we can take back as a leadership team and talk about. And I often think about, as you mentioned, the financial benefits and how important that is. And then there's also the student side and keeping students in their communities and how important that is. And that piece,
I'm a huge believer in this. I'm playing devil's advocate
yeah,
here. But
I hear you. And so, the trade-off for that might be so much greater than any scores that, come about because of that. So I think that's a question that we can bring back to the team and certainly getting to know Lunenburg, and we want to consult with our Director of Special Ed for our perspective too.
Thank
Just
you.
as an aside to that, last year was the first year we made adjustments to scheduling at the Turkey Hill and the primary school so that the grade level special educator could participate in all of the common planning time, because then they get time as well with the specialist in mapping out the lessons that lay ahead for the coming weeks. I think over time that will be a benefit to us, to be sure that our special ed teachers, while they are not responsible to teach the full curriculum, they need to be really knowledgeable about the curriculum. And there are resources as part of the curriculum that we adopted that can be utilized by special educators. And we need to continue to work with them so that they can optimally use what they have access to. Additionally, this year, we are asking our special ed teachers to get some training in Wilson reading. Not because we want all of our special ed teachers teaching the Wilson method, more so for the professional development, the deepening of their expertise and understanding in different approaches for reading instruction. So we have started to shift some focus, even last year, in this direction.
Ms. Brzezowski?
I had a few questions. First of all, thank you very much for the color coding on that by cohort chart. That made it incredibly
It's
easier
running
to
out of
read.
colors, yeah.
Thank you. I-
We're familiar with the problem.
That was fantastic. And I do agree with Peter's point that the cohort, if you follow the cohort, it doesn't look terrible, but if you follow across the rows, it's concerning. Like grade 10 in ELA was 10% lower. Grade 8 is 25% lower. That's, the 8th graders got hit pretty hard with COVID. It's concerning. I don't think we're doing better than we were in 2019, and that's that I think sometimes we forget about the COVID learning loss and how much it affected the students. So I had questions. Who administers a DIBELS assessment? Is it a specialized teacher, or can it be any of the teachers? And how much time does it take, and do we give a DIBELS assessment to every single student?
Turn that over to the DIBELS expert. So first question about who screens. Literacy specialist, so me, the MTSS team. This year prior, we talked about scoring and we listened to a student online and we kind of scored as well. We talked about that common scoring so that we were kind of all on the same page. And so it really depends per grade. So K-2 and soon K-3 will all students screened with our universal screener. And so it depends on how many subtests. So in 2nd grade, you could potentially do 3 subtests. It's a minute apiece, so between kind of the directions, I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And then similar to kindergarten or in 1st grade, there's 5 subset tests. And again, a minute each, including maybe 30 seconds of, so it is a quick moment in time, but it gives us some real valuable information. And then similar to when we do DIBELS in 3rd grade, it will be the literacy specialist and the MTSS specialist as well. And it will be a similar process where we kind of look at making sure that we have common scoring, if we have questions, how we're marking, because a big part of that too is being able to look at the student and the things that they're doing, their strengths that they have, and if there was any misconceptions, where they lie. So kind of making sure that we all are marking the same so that whoever picks up the book can understand what the student was doing.
Is it a one-time assessment, or do we repeat it throughout the year?
It's 3 times a year.
Okay.
Yep, so the beginning of the year, winter, and in the spring, and each time the kind of expectations of how many words are read in a minute, how many sounds they were able to do in a minute increase as the year goes on. And one of the nice things as well is you can use this as a progress monitoring tool. So beyond just the 3 times a year to say, okay, I'm noticing this one particular area with the student, I really want to work and give some strong intervention in, and being able to make sure, is my intervention working? You can do a quick 1-minute progress monitoring to say, yes it is, no it isn't, let me try to adjust. So it's kind of a really useful tool with multiple, it's kind of why it was in that column a couple of times, where it's giving us really important information, but can also help identify instructional needs, comparison.
We are doing something right in science, technology, and engineering. We are far above the state averages there. What are we doing right there? What are we doing different?
So again, being really new, I think, and I'm gonna have Dr. Burnham jump in, you have a STEM teacher that is a specialist at your elementary school, and I think that goes a long way in making sure that those standards are, they're taught by someone who has that background, that content area. I think having it, that time set aside for science, you know, even coming out of COVID, it was math and literacy. It was math and literacy, and you know, social studies and science needs its time too. And that oftentimes is where kids, you know, their imagination gets captured. They're doing hands-on types of things, and how important that is for learning. And so I think that contributes to the scores that we're seeing.
You're sitting in a science lab right
Yeah.
now. You might catch the scent of vinegar.
Yeah. Are there lessons from what we're doing with STE that we can translate into ELA and math? Or is it we're just above the curve for the rest of the state when it comes to our STE programming?
There are always instructional practices that can translate across all different discipline areas. You know, we have students working in small groups to solve problems. When we're giving them choices about how to, you know, within whatever it is that they're doing, because that increases their engagement. So a lot of STEM work, a lot of STEAM work, sometimes people incorporate the arts, comes at teaching and learning from a very different perspective, and that is, you know, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And then experimenting, you know, that whole engineering cycle where you're trying something, a prototype, see if it works, it doesn't work, making adjustments. And again, that teamwork and relying on somebody else and that communication that plays in with that. And so sometimes, you know, translating that into, I can, you know, speak to how that works in math and you see how that works in literacy, but a lot of those same skills, those instructional practices and skills we want students to learn can be transferred to other discipline areas.
Do we have a box curriculum for STE?
I don't believe we do.
No. Okay. Why do you think the state, so across the board this year, state scores were lower for everyone?
Why do I think?
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, for literacy, you know, preschool and kindergarten are just so foundational in learning your letter sounds. And those are the students that were hugely disrupted during COVID. It's hard to make up those gains. Every year, the discrepancy that widens. Number sense and operations, learning, counting. There are some recent research studies that actually say early mathematical skills, numeracy skills are a greater predictor of third grade reading abilities than early literacy skills. So, you know, you combine that loss in those early grades, I think, again, we're going to see that impact for a while. I think that's a huge explanation for what's happening across the state.
Okay. Do we use Access? What is Access?
Oh, Access is the state's assessment for how our multilingual students, our English language students are learning. So,
and so I know this is focused on the MCAS because it's a presentation on the MCAS. What if we didn't focus on the MCAS? What would happen if we just ignored the scores entirely?
This is question 3 on the ballot.
Yeah, no,
2, I'm getting
They'd
confused.
still have to take it. They'd still have to take it, and we would still care about
Yes,
the
they still
results.
have-
But what if we,
Well, that's the challenge, is that they still have to take it, but they know it doesn't count for anything.
yeah, what if,
Yeah, so I think, so it's interesting, being in education for a long time, you know, we now have internal assessments. We now have things like DIBELS and iReady and other assessments that internally we can use. Before that, MCAS pretty much was the only standardized measure that we had. So, you know, we could continue to use internal measures to see how our students are progressing. The accountability piece is there because it needs to be there from the federal government. That's a big component of that. That's an accountability system. That's really what it was designed for. Unfortunately, it doesn't help our teachers in the moment instructionally because it's a years in review. We often don't know the questions. We're kind of shooting in the dark in some of those ways. But, it does help us sometimes with curricular alignment to see, how are we doing according to some of the standards. But all in all, we know the standards, we have internal measures. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
I just the question of, are we penalizing our test scores by keeping students in district? I get what you're asking, it's just the fact that asking
It's not a
that-
question we should have to ask.
It's not, and
Right.
that's,
But there is great value to normalize data.
yeah.
And we are engaged
Mhm.
in a data-driven conversation, which is exactly the kind of conversation that we need to be having. And anything that undermines that data makes it harder for these people to do their jobs, in my view.
Ms. Ashenbaum?
I just had a couple of thoughts. For people that don't know me, I was an elementary school teacher for 35 years, so I'm very comfortable in all this stuff, and I see how this works, and the COVID fallout is real, and the struggle is real. I have a daughter that works in graduate school, and she sees it in the kids that go past her, what they lost from COVID. It's going to take a long time, and I understand that. I thank you for the work that you're doing, pulling this apart. I know how hard that is, but the real hard work beyond that is when you take all these numbers and you put them in the classroom, and you work with Susie on this and Johnny on that, and you balance everybody, and you give people what they need. So I thank you for your work on that front, because I know what that hard work is. And that's the reason for the numbers. And in the improvement plans that we'll talk about, I see the emphasis on the lower achieving kids. And they'll grow. It will take time, but they will grow. They got hit by COVID the same as everybody else. And, it's going to take a lot of intervention using all these numbers, figuring out which one needs which piece of which pie. And it's very hard work, and I thank you very much for the work you do, and this is very well presented.
One thing, if I could just make a comment, you raised the question of if we took MCAS out and we looked at not that measure. I think one thing that Lisa and I are really strengthening is the way that we are screening kids, the data that we are collecting on the early literacy skills and early numeracy skills, because we have a math screener as well. And based on that screener, it really dives down deep into early numeracy skills like subitizing and counting and number recognition. So we're able to put interventions in place that are really drilled down very specifically for kids to fill some of those gaps. So I think as we're doing more and more of that, that's going to be a bigger bang for our buck to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Scullenbrady? Okay. I also wanted to thank you. I would agree with a lot of what my colleagues said. I appreciated the data and the trends and also the color coding with the cohorts. That definitely helped a lot. I think it's challenging to decide what data you want to use because there's so much data, but I think you did a really good job presenting it. And also on our end, I think it's good for us to know what resources you guys need, and that you let Dr. Burnham know, Dr. Gilson know, and us know as we're going to be making the budget, and we want to make sure you guys have the resources because we do care about increasing those scores. Thank you.
We'll be sure to. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say thank you very much, in particular to Amy Resnick for her work. The math, we're seeing some good growth in that area. And I would say, I just repeat what Dr. Book has already mentioned. that largely across the state, even math was flat. They only saw a couple of grades that showed any gain. We did better than that. And I believe wholeheartedly that it's because of the work that Amy's been leading with the MTSS team that we have in both of our lower grades. And just as a reminder, I'm not shocked that our ELA is flat. We did not have a literacy specialist all of last year. So I'm very excited to have Lisa Canton on the team.
Excited to be here.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
for being
Thank you.
here.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, the next item on the agenda is the action item FY25 school improvement plans.
All right, so we'll invite our principals, Mr. Santry, Mrs. Squire, and Mr. Yuan.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight to talk about middle school and the high school improvement plans. Tim Santry, I'm the principal of the middle high school. I'd first like to start off by thanking the members of my school advisory council for both the middle school and the high school. They were a major part of helping kind of develop these goals. Our councils have been outstanding in terms of collaborative problem solving and being great advisors to having their ear to the community on some, issues or concerns that we can address in a school improvement plan. So I'd like to thank them. So we've been refining our plans based on the student data that we receive, and a major piece of that data for the middle and the high school is that MCAS data and the accountability reports. So our school improvement plan reflects those discussions and ideas, and it has like a strong mix of successful strategies that we've had in the past, and then also what the data is telling us. So I believe we provided you copies of both the middle and the high school
Yes.
school improvement plan. So with your permission, I would like to, with broad strokes, talk about both of those at the same time. The three goals that we have in both of the improvement plans are similar, and then I could ask any specific questions at the end. Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Great. So we have three measurable goals to improve our school. And we've created these activities and practices that will support the achievement of these goals. So our focus is on student learning, on chronic absenteeism, and on parent and family engagement in both of our school improvement plans in the middle and the high school. So our first goal was based upon the data that our students with disabilities aren't performing at the rate that gets them to meeting and exceeding expectations on MCAS testing. So we adopted the district student learning goal in order so that we could be consistent and aligned with all of the structures that we have in place in order to support student learning. Our outcome, if we are successful, is to increase those students in those subgroups, specifically those students with disabilities, and an increase in scores in the meeting and exceeding category, and in the high school, an increase in scores in some classroom assessments, and hopefully that we see increases in grades also. The second goal for both buildings is reducing that chronic absenteeism, and we've talked about it. It was a perfect lead-in that, prior 2019, and then 2020, 2021, that chronic absenteeism shot up. We have been successful at reducing, as an aggregate, our chronic absenteeism, but still some of our subgroups are lagging in that area. And working through the pandemic, it was extremely difficult to enforce our attendance policy if we were requiring students to stay out of school for a 5-day period or even longer until they didn't show any symptoms. So I think now we're in a place where we can put are protocols in place. Dr. Book has actually shared some resources through the Department of Education around chronically absent students. Some of those internal and external supports that we can provide families in order to reduce that amount of chronic absenteeism. So on goal number 3 is a family and community engagement goal. So anecdotally, we have noticed that, we are talking about the pandemic and the effect that's had on our school community, is that we have had a decrease in families engaging in live activities at our buildings, such as not parent-teacher conferences, but open house or athletic events or plays or pep rallies or other activities that we've had in the past. So we want to increase the amount of time where families can become engaged in activities at the school, but also so that we can check to make sure families are engaged that can't be a part of those things at school. So I think a big piece of goal number 3 in both of those school improvement plans would be providing a survey to parents. I want to get an idea of why we had a decrease in people coming out to our school to engage in those different activities, but I also want to make sure that they continue to feel engaged if they are a parent that has a second shift as a job and they can't come, or we have families that don't have transportation that come to a family activity. I think I'll be able to provide you more information and then maybe have a better path forward. I do want to try different avenues of media in order to publicize the things that we have at school and see if that has a major impact on getting parents here. So that was a lot of talking. Those are the broad brushes, and I apologize to my colleagues that I kind of just took that all, but I would be glad to answer any questions about the middle and the high school plans.
What questions do the members have? Comments?
As a member of the high school advisory committee, I just want to thank you. I think you have certainly taken many of my concerns and suggestions and ideas to heart. They're reflected somewhat in this document, particularly the family engagement stuff, and I'm really hopeful that we can make some measurable improvements in those areas. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Brzezowski?
I think that goal 2 and 3 are gonna tie in to each other
Right.
as you get more community and family engagement.
Sure, and the direct correlation between kids being absent and student learning is evident. So the more we can get them in, the programs that we have in place to help students, the better student learning we'll have.
I haven't actually seen numbers on the chronic absenteeism. Can you share with us at some point? Doesn't have to be this second.
Absolutely. So on the DESE website, under school profiles, if you go on our accountability scores.
Yeah, that's only updated through. Yeah, that's not updated for last year though.
It is.
Oh, it is?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, so we actually had a decrease in our aggregate in some of our subgroups. I believe Dr. Book has reported out on that. But there are our lowest performing students still remains a number that we need to tackle.
Can't teach them if they're not here.
That's exactly correct.
Ms. Ashenbaugh?
I just want to comment, as I commented at the meeting yesterday, the importance of the SRO in the attendance. As anecdotally, I was speaking with him, with Officer McNamara one day, and he was explaining how impassioned he is about getting kids to school. And, it takes a village. So once again, I appreciate the work that you do with Officer McNamara and everyone else to get the kids to school.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Officer McNamara has taken several trips to homes in order to coax students Sometimes they start their day in Officer McNamara's office with Hank, and that's a great way in order to make them feel comfortable and safe, and then we move them back into class. It's a great transition piece.
Thank you. Mr. Scalabrini? And I don't have anything. I think these are great goals. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll jump in.
Oh,
I think you're going to see a theme across all of our schools, almost as if we actually talk to one another and work together. And I will take your lead and go broad brushes and open to questions afterwards. I do want to thank our School Advisory Council for their work and their input in designing and reviewing this. I also want to thank our coaches and Dr. Bookus for their support, Dr. Burnham, and the faculty and staff at Turkey Hill. As we're developing this, it's through our conversations about the data and about what's happening in the classrooms and about our students that informs what we want to do and where we want to go. It was clear across the district and in Turkey Hill in particular that our subgroup of students with disabilities needed to be an area of focus. If we looked at our scores in ELA and mathematics, all of our subgroup scores kind of huddled around the same area, both for growth and for scaled score. And our students with disabilities score was an outlier. And why is that? Most places I've been, growth has been highest with the students with disabilities, partially because they have that much more room to grow, and the efforts have been placed into helping them grow. So our first and second goal, academic goals, are around improving the performance of our students with disabilities. The first goal is in regards to reading, the second goal is in regards to mathematics, and demonstrating that improved growth and improved performance. If you look at the graph, that's the third page in, you see the little green dot and the little yellow dot. The yellow dot is our non-disabled students, the green dot is our disabled students, and our goal is to bring those two dots closer together and further to the right and up as we can. And in doing so, we'll be working with our academic coaches and some of the work that they spoke about, but more particularly in regards to our students with disabilities, developing practices that involve small group instruction over whole group instruction during our intervention times. We scheduled our days so that we now have 2 intervention times during the day. One either to focus on mathematics or one to focus on ELA, or allowing the interventionists to work with smaller groups because she or he have more time to bring students together. Working on differentiated instruction within the classroom so that when regular classroom instruction is going on, the teacher is doing exactly what you said, Mrs. Ashenbrook, giving Johnny what he needs, giving Jane what she needs, and pulling kids together based upon not what I remember from school, the buzzards, the bluebirds, and the eagles, but we're working on this skill and this standard with these guys. And tomorrow, I may not be with that group because I've got it and someone else is coming into a group because they have another need. So keeping that group flexible as we move forward, as we're meeting the needs of everyone. We'll be providing some professional development at the beginning of this next calendar year on using the iReady data in a different way, rather than just using it as benchmark data and data to tell us, okay, this is the areas we need to focus with individual students or across our curriculum, using it to help us differentiate instruction. There are ways to dig deeper into the information with iReady that not only can tell us which kids would work best together, but what skills these children need in order to get to where we want them to be. So what we've been doing since before COVID, but particularly since COVID, with those COVID babies as we're trying to catch up, is backfill the skills that they missed while trying to keep them up with the grade level skills that they need to get. And the the supports in iReady will help us be able to do that in addition to the supports of our coaches in getting those differentiated instruction, the small group instruction, and those center type activities in our classrooms together. And we'll be doing that for both English language arts and for mathematics. Our third goal is focused on school environment and school community. And the survey that was taken by our students in 22 and 23, we see that this sense of social and emotional security and using social media seem to be the most need of our students. So our plan is to address those. Our behavioral health study team has been revamped so that teachers are able to, I don't want to use the word refer, present students to that team, where our guidance counselor, our social worker, our school psychologist, assistant principal, and I meet, and we can brainstorm what can we do to help this student function best at school. As if I'm concerned about my emotional security, what's going to happen when I get home? Is there going to be dinner on the table? Is Dad going to be mad when I get home? Is the kid sitting next to me going to turn around and yell at me? You know, I'm not able to focus on my learning. If they're not there, they can't learn. I might be there physically, but I'm not totally there in my mind because my head is focused on something else, helping our students address those issues. Our guidance counselors have been including in their work with students a focus outside of the school, even in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. The kids coming in and saying, he's writing stuff about me on the internet. What are you talking about? No, in Roblox. We're playing Roblox, and he's putting in the profile, you know, I do this or he does that, and providing some direct instruction on how to deal with that, involving parents and making sure parents are aware that that aspect of the program exists, and maybe keeping a closer eye on what's happening will be helpful for everybody. In addition to the traditional friends groups, lunch bunch, and helping ease those social issues together. We will plan to budget for 26-27 school year to administer the School Climate Center survey again, so that we have another set of hard data to compare the 22-23 numbers in to measure our growth. We've begun it already this school year. I keep forgetting Joe's last name. Joe Kristusia was here for all of us to work on trauma-informed instruction. Kind of focusing on how to make school a place where I can feel safe, comfortable, and ready to learn. And I think one of the things that most of the teachers took out of that was that, geez, there's a lot of people that have experienced trauma. Once you figure out that the definition, how I react to something. So Mr. Lennon and I could experience the same thing, and it's extremely traumatic for me, and he's fine. I need something different than Mr. Lennon needs, and how can we provide that for our students, so that when they come to school, they're present, they want to be here, we're not having the fights in the morning about getting off the bus or getting up on the bus. It's a place that they want to come to, and they're ready to learn. We'll also address, it's not specific in here, but we'll also address attendance. It's not, chronic absenteeism isn't as bad. I don't want to say bad in the right way. It's different from the middle school, high school, and the elementary school, because some of them are getting themselves out ready to go to school. There's an adult involved in our conversations about making sure kids get to school. But we see the same thing. The students who are lowest performing often have the worst attendance. And I think a piece of that goes along with our third goal. If they're feeling out of place, if they're feeling uncomfortable, if they're feeling like their needs aren't being met. Yeah. If every day I came to school, Dr. Burnham gave me stuff to do that I couldn't do, I'd think twice about getting up and coming to school. So we want to address those as we move forward, bring our scores to a place that's going to reflect our community.
Any questions, comments from the committee?
First of all, welcome.
Thank you.
I don't think we've had the opportunity to meet face to face, so glad to have you here. You've obviously gotten up to speed very quickly, so
That's my thing.
glad to have you. Glad to have you. I don't have any questions other than that.
Thank you. Mrs. Scolambrini? All right, thank you.
Oh, can I ask one question?
Yes, Ms. Brzezowski?
You mentioned in here, facilitate all fifth grade students' attendance at Nature's Classroom.
We had,
Talk more about that.
this year we had, I'm not gonna have the exact number in my head, 10 to 12 that did not go, for various reasons. None of them can't afford to. So it was either parents made a decision about not wanting my child to spend that time away from home, or in discussions with us and their child wasn't ready for that. We did provide, I don't wanna say a comparable experience, because you can't at school, but they had a Nature's Classroom camp. It wasn't, they're here, you're doing your reading, your math book, and your stuff. They had hands-on experience in science. We walked to the creek behind the playground, took water samples, found the frogs that were living there, observed those for a little while. They took samples and put things under a microscope, made goop, made glue, sang songs, had some extra time outside.
I saw the pictures.
Yeah, we did the owl pellets again.
Oh,
So,
I saw the pictures, which
So-
was nice that got included
Yes.
with the photos of the students.
yeah, it was important.
That's good to know.
Can you talk about how you would facilitate all fifth grade student attendance? Or is that
No,
part of the plan is figuring that out?
moving forward, I think consulting with parents, talking with parents about the experience, the teachers that are going to be there with them. We had some who were able to go and be successful because their parents chaperoned part of the time, if not all of the time. Making that an option available for some parents is, can't do that because they've got to work, they can't get the time. Trying to make the parent feel comfortable, and trying to make the student feel comfortable. I know we had a couple who didn't go because they weren't comfortable, and there was no amount of us talking, the parents talking, the guidance counselor talking, that was changing their mind. It's early in the year, so the relationships aren't quite there yet with all the new teachers and new classmates and new structures and things. I think I'd be, if we did this at the end of a school year, we might have more kids feeling more comfortable to go because they've been with us, they trust us, they know us. But if you've never been away from home, going away from home for a few days,
I think it was a lot of,
can be tough.
I think it was a lot of students'
It was great.
first experience
Yeah.
away from home, but,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had a great time.
oh, they did. Oh, they did. Okay, and, yeah, so it also says create band and chorus program for fifth grade.
We've got the band course going, a band program going and continuing. I'm talking with Mr. Anthony now about adding chorus aspect to that.
Okay, I know, yeah, I went to a concert last year and they were, Mr. was great.
They're gonna sing,
Oh,
but
yeah,
it-
cool. You're gonna make,
that's great. That's all use.
okay, and that was all my questions about that.
Thank you. Ms. Squire?
All right. Well, you guys have heard a lot about number 1 and 2 from my colleagues, so I'm not going to. But I want to thank, I have to thank my instructional leadership team as well as my advisory council, because without both of them, that is how we developed and came up with our school improvement plan. So this doesn't happen in a vacuum. So there was a lot of thought that went into our school improvement plan. Just like my colleagues, 1 and 2 are focusing on our literacy and our math, and looking at all the cohorts of students. So while we're focusing on the discrepancy between students with disabilities and those without disabilities, we also have to focus on our struggling students as well, our ELL learners, everyone that is a part of our school community member. So looking at that, looking at our scores, and then what do we have? So pre-K to 2, we do not have MCAS, but we lay the foundation. We do have DIBELS. We do have iReady. We do have the universal screener, so we can really target instruction and cohort students together with that explicit instruction on the skill deficits that they have and really shore it up. We just did a progress monitoring meeting, and I'm really excited to say that in one of the cohorts, 4 students are already in the green. So green means they have the skills. Now what we will do with that data is we're going to continue to progress monitor them for a couple more weeks. If they continue to be successful and stay solidly in the green, they can be released and do more instruction in a larger group. So that small group instruction is really beneficial. So looking at and really disaggregating the data to see where the skills are and how you can cohort students. You know, we want that path to proficiency. And in order to do that, we really have to find out what are the skill deficits that they have and how do we shore them up. So really working together, we're looking at, I can say that my MTSS and my special ed staff are doing a dyscalculia training, so in the area of math, to really look and dive deeper on what can we do, what tools can we add into their toolbox? How can we really shore up some of those small group instruction and get it really explicit for what students need? We're doing the same with reading as well. My special ed staff are not attending Wilson. It's not for the younger kids. Wilson usually starts at an older level, so for us, it's really those foundational skills. Looking at the DIBELS and really diving deep into the DIBELS to see where the deficits are in reading and what can we do. So that's really what we're looking at for right now for those two. So I know you've heard a lot of information from everybody about 1 and 2, but what I'm really excited about is number 3. So ours looks a little bit different. It's still about the family engagement, but really working with, we have some great training around trauma-informed practices and culturally responsive practices. So this first year of this goal is really that sense of belonging. Because if you don't have a sense of belonging, that academic curricular rigor is not going to come. So how do we have that sense of belonging? We heard we have 2 SROs. So in our building, we have Officer Monroe, who has been fantastic, making those connections with students. He couldn't come to open house, but as Mr. Santry was talking about, how do we get families in? What do we do? How can we engage families? And I was really excited. I know Mr. Layton, I believe, was at our open house. I was overwhelmed by the number of parents that we had at open house. We did something a little different this year. We thought outside the box. So I'm new to the primary, Mr. Smith is new to the primary. So we took some of our background and really created how can we get people in. And that, I'm hoping, starts a building block for us of getting volunteers in. Because if they're not involved at an early level, it's really hard as they progress through the years to get them involved. And we also have to think about what's that sense of belonging, what to get staff in. So really looking at all of our community resources. So how do we work with the police and fire department? Next week we have fire safety. So we're going to have fire, you may see fire trucks at our building, which is very developmentally appropriate. We have a little, I was told there's this unit that is coming to the back of the building, but kids will get to experience it in a non-threatening. We need to have the same for families as well. So how can we start getting families in staff? Because we're asking staff to take a lot of risks and put themselves out there to continue to make academic gains with our students. How do we build a sense of belonging? So this first year surveying, really finding out, how do staff feel? How do the parents feel? How do our community resources feel? Do they feel welcome, that they can come into our building? So really diving into that, creating that welcoming environment. And that's all different avenues, whether it be IEPs, 504s. Preschool is an introduction to your formative school years. If you don't have a good preschool experience, it's hard to build on that. So we have to do a little investigating to find out what's going to bring members into our community and become part of it. How can we support families to become, as Mr. Santry is saying, if you have a family member that's working a second shift, it's hard to come to nighttime events. So what are we doing during the day? We have to do a deeper dive into that, and I think that that's really important to garner some information. So our first year is really that investigating, looking at the different resources, and then as part of that, our buildings and our facilities, taking a deeper look at it, really doing walkthroughs. I come from a district before that invited school committee members, when I do a walkthrough through my building with the fire department, that school committee members are coming, or there's a committee that we can form that can have parent volunteers so they can see the inner workings of what's going on in the school. I think it just gives sometimes that ease of this is what's going on. There's some information we can share with families. You know, when we talk about trainings and evacuations for Alice, if we have, that information we can't share because that is a safety and security for our students. But we can walk them through our buildings and talk about fire exits and if there were a fire drill or this is what your child's going to experience, because then they can bring it home and share it with their child at home. So it's that partner back and forth. So that's really goal number 3 is, I know you've heard a lot about academics, but I think this piece as well, because if you don't have the family support, it's really going to be hard to build upon that academic rigor. At least in the formative years, it's still early. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Brzezowski?
I know you do.
I love the, sorry.
No, I love it, I love it.
I love the third goal especially. You guys are in a unique situation where you're the ones training the parents, and I especially realized that last year when my youngest went to kindergarten, I was thinking about the fact that Chrissy is in this situation of having to teach the parents how to interact with the school system, and that's a hard job. She does a good job. It's basically you guys are training the parents how to interact with the school system, because if it's your oldest going, or if you haven't done this before, they go into the school and you introduce them to the school culture of Lunenburg. That's really important. So I think your front office staff also has a lot to do with that, as the ones who are the first point of contact and then the main point of contact for a lot of things in the school system. So I think that's a strength you might want to lean on, especially you guys. Yeah. So this is great because I think it really acknowledges that unique role that you have as the intro to Lunenburg. It says evaluate PBIS lessons through student exit tickets. You do student exit tickets on the behavioral, how does that
So
work?
we do a lesson every month.
Okay,
So at the beginning of the month, there's a theme, we work on it, so there's leaves right now that have themes that will go up, there was the puzzle pieces for September.
okay.
That's all part of our PBIS, but are kids really internalizing it, or is it we're just saying this? We have to have a measure to really check and see, are they understanding, just for like math and ELA, we're checking in, we're doing those exit tickets. It could be an oral exit ticket just to ask a question to see
Okay.
what they're understanding. It doesn't necessarily have to be like the written, but we need to check and see, are they internalizing it? Are they able to understand what we're asking of them? And there has to be some kind of measure. And I don't think there's ever been anything in place. We just teach this and then think it sticks.
What do the exit tickets look like? Is it just a conversation with some
It could be a
students?
conversation, we could do like a smiley face, you put it in kid terms, yeah, thumbs up, thumbs down. Did you understand it? Do you need to know more? So we do thumbs up, sideways, thumbs down is a good indicator for kids. Mike and I will be doing check-ins as well, because we want to know, like, okay, did the kids really understand? Because if they don't understand, then we need to change how we're teaching that lesson. So we have Kindness coming up. Kindness Day is November 13th. We'll be celebrating that at the primary school. December, we have Giving. There's a Giving Tuesday. I believe it's December 3rd. So we're starting to bring in some of that PBIS and the character into all school assemblies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Beardmore?
I'm thrilled to hear about all of the thinking and work that you're all doing in terms of family engagement, community development. My colleagues here and the superintendent and Mrs. Santry know this is a very big thing for me. They joke, I'm from here, I talk about being from here, I relay my experiences over 52 years of being from Lunenburg. But I think that the community and family component is as important as all of the other attributes that we talk about when we talk about our schools. And I think that it's a component that we may have taken for granted in the past, and we can't afford to do that. And so I'm really glad that you're all bearing down and acknowledging that there's opportunity for improvement, and we really need to encourage participation and engagement amongst all of our family and the broader community as well. You know, Carol talked about at our last meeting, we know we're communicating through our newsletters to parents, but the broader community should know what we're doing as well.
Right.
They should know that there's a play next Tuesday or something, you know, and that they're welcome. And we need to take that extra effort and initiative, because our kids, when they're my age, will remember those people that were not faculty or staff or administration, but took it in, or maybe members of those groups as well, but particularly the community members and the parents that took an extra interest in them as well. And those will have lifelong effects on their overall success, civic engagement, community engagement, and how they raise their own kids, in my opinion. So thank you very much.
Is there any chance of bringing back the first grade play?
I haven't heard anything about the first grade play, so now you just, I'm gonna be asking my teachers about the first grade play.
Casualty, and it's adorable.
It's an exercise in chaos.
It was adorable.
Ms. Ashenbaum?
I've been sitting here and I'm reflecting, as everybody knows, this is my last year on the board, and I'm reflecting on what is in your school improvement plans and how different they are from 6 years ago. How far we have come. We never would have heard the words differentiated instruction. We never would have heard about teaching individual kids individual things. We have come a really long way. You've done great work, all of you. It's great work.
Thank you.
And Dr. Burnham as well.
Mr. Scullambrini? I would say I appreciate the collaboration. I think just the collaboration on the goals. I think working together, you guys will be able to help each other out and learn so much from each other too. So I think that's great. I would also agree with my colleagues. I think starting at the younger grades too, with the culture, setting expectations, trying not to overwhelm the parents too much, finding that right balance, I think will be good. I know school supplies is always an issue at my house. We're always like, oh, it's the school supplies. What are the school supplies? So I think just trying to find that right balance, but I think culture is going to be really important because I think it also connects to those upper grades too. As you set the right culture, the attendance is going to be better and the other schools as well. So great work. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So it was an action
I was gonna
item
say,
for
don't we have
the
to vote to
FY25
accept?
school improvement plans. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the FY25 school improvement plans.
Second.
Any discussion? I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Mr. Schoenbrini? Mrs. Brzezowski?
Yes.
Mr. Beardmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Ashenbaum?
Yes.
And Mr. Leighton?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is action item SEL grant.
I had put this on the agenda as we were aware of a new grant. However, as we dug in a little bit more deeply, we don't meet the criteria for this one, so we'll be taking a pass on this one.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the PTO liaison. I had put this on the agenda. Mr. Scullambrini is the PTO liaison currently. He also is on the budget task committee that meets also on the same days typically. So I wanted to open it up for potential action, discussion on whether to either act on who the liaison is, maybe make a secondary liaison, or just take no action too. So I'll open it up to discussion first, and we'll see if there's any action.
When do we meet?
I also don't know how much time left is on the budget task committee too, as well. Mr. Scullambrini, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, so we have I think we have either one meeting or two meetings after a special town meeting, but we'll be done by December. If we can hold on until January, I have no problem going back to PTO. I found
Are we interested as a committee on a backup for the PTO liaison, just so we have someone there instead of staff? I know staff was giving us updates.
How many meetings are left? Like, is it once a month?
Once a month.
So you're talking one meeting or two meetings?
Yeah.
I'll do one or two meetings while Tony's doing the other. And then he has to take it back, though.
Okay. Any other discussion?
That'll feel nice after the budget task force to.
Yeah, to do
All right.
PTO.
Thank you, Carol. I don't know if we
Okay.
need an action on this one then? Are we good with
No,
that?
I'm just
No.
subbing.
Any discussion? All
But
right,
somebody's
subbing.
gonna have to tell me when the next meeting is.
Yeah, we can take care of that. It's definitely on my calendar. My wife's always there.
Okay.
I gotta watch the kids, so I can't do it. All right, next item on the agenda is the discussion superintendent's goals.
So you'll see a lot of overlap with the goals that I've brought forward for your discussion. To what you heard in the school improvement plans. Liz, if you can scroll, please. All right, so there's some comparison data. Again, we're really focusing in on the students with disabilities subgroup and the gaps and, you know, looking in particular areas where we're falling behind the state average. You've got listed here the priority, the focus priorities indicators as identified by the Department of Ed for administrators for the 24-25 school year. So I've included those there. So the first goal would be the student learning goal. You can see that it's connected to the student learning goal, particularly the one that Mr. Santry demonstrated early in their presentation. The wording in his school improvement plan, that goal has been written for teachers to choose to adopt. It was specifically written for teachers. You might have seen that it referenced, you know, identifying students in your class or classes, not to exceed 7 students, that you would really take on for the year and focus and try to close some skill gaps, knowledge gaps for those kiddos. Taking that out, the principals then, the principal, the assistant principal who evaluate those teachers, they will compile the list of all the identified students of the teachers that they're evaluating. And that larger group of students now becomes the cohort that the evaluators are also looking to try to support and move. They do that by connecting with teachers directly, checking in on progress on individual students that are in their buildings, classroom observations, those kinds of things. Take that out a step further, and that brings us to the goal at the central office level, where we will be engaging with principals and assistant principals, and they will be presenting information and data on progress for students, their larger cohort of students. And again, we'll work on ways that we can help move the needle for them, if they need additional supports, if they feel that teachers need additional supports from us. We'll focus some professional development, and we'll be providing updates for families through a variety of means, including some of our parent meetings, newsletters, those sorts of things. The professional practice goal, you heard a little bit about that as well. It's a theme for our full-day professional development day in November. It's the overarching area of the strategy for continuous improvement, creating that safe, caring, and inclusive environment. So again, here, we would be looking for consultants who can provide workshops for staff. The keynote that we have on November 5th is an example of that. We'll be looking to attend any out-of-district workshops. I can't tell you what those are because they will come along into the inbox, and when we see something that aligns with work that we're doing, that's when we make decisions around who should attend this particular type of workshop. Looking to utilize very structured protocols to discuss articles, again, as part of the district leadership team. And then through modeling that with our district leadership, principals can then take that and utilize the same model with their own building leadership teams or their faculty. All right, so District Improvement Goal 1, this connects back to the work of the Budget Task Force, and it actually connects to some of the things that the Select Board is focused on as well, around what can we do to make Lunenburg, and in this case, Lunenburg Public Schools more specifically, a desirable employer, the place where people want to be able to get the job. And that's for all categories of our staff, not just teachers. So we need to do a little bit of research and try to understand if there are any unique benefits that other districts might be offering to teachers, explore what types of benefits the corporate world might offer to their employees, have some surveys and focus group discussions with employees as to what types of additional benefits might make Lunenburg Public Schools more attractive. We would look to summarize any findings and present them to the committee in the fall, so that if there were any ideas that the committee wanted to pursue that would have a budgetary impact, we would have time to build that into the budget. Or if there was going to be some other type of impact, we would have time to publicize that information. Additionally, we'd like to do some work at the central office level for the key positions that we do have. As you know, the staff at the central office wear multiple hats. So when there's somebody who's retiring or pursuing another opportunity and leaves the role, there's a lot to train and get up to speed. So we would like to do some work to create a guidebook, if you will, for all of the critical positions. What are the roles and responsibilities? And then get down into the details, step by step. What do you have to do to actually execute these things? What access to different things do you need? Who else do you need to consult with? As well as mapping out on a calendar. These are the things that you need to be aware of. You got to get done in September. These are things that come up in January. Can't miss the deadline. That sort of a roadmap. And particularly for these key roles at central office, wherever possible, we would try to have some overlap where the new hire would have some days to work with the employee who's exiting the district. When Fran McCluskey, our special ed secretary, retired, we were able to do that. She had already created her binder that mapped out all of her roles and responsibilities. And we had several days where Laureen Broden, who is our new secretary in the special ed office, was able to work together side by side and walk through all of the things that were in that binder, so that she could see firsthand for herself how to do some things. But you learn something, you don't do it for another 6 months, you need that resource to go back to. So that's some key work that we would like to get done at central office. And then, district improvement goal 2. We would like to gather together plans documenting the infrastructure needs of the district. Largely, those would be IT and facility type needs. We would like to compile documents that would be archived and reside on the district website, as well as in a hard copy at the central office and the superintendent's office. We think that these documents will be helpful for big picture planning. I would just like to mention that I had meetings with all members of the school committee, with the exception of Mr. Schoenbrini, to talk about all of your ideas around areas that we might look to focus some goals for the next year or two. I think we were able to incorporate much of what I heard from the different members. No need to vote on any of this evening. If you have any thoughts or feedback tonight, that's fine. Otherwise, you can send me emails or send me questions, and we can bring this back at the next meeting.
So we'll open up to the members with questions, comments that you have tonight. And again, as the superintendent stated, you can also reach out to her after the meeting as well.
At a high level, I think this looks really good. I think it reflects the individual conversation I had with you largely, as well as the initial conversation we had here a month or so ago. My only general comment is that on the second district improvement goal around facilities, I think that, and we adopted as a school committee goal, have we adopted school committee?
No,
We have
that's
not.
We're about to, okay, it's on our list.
It's on the list tonight.
Around, coming to resolution on, I'm not sure exactly what Brian's language was, but something around resolving the plan for Turkey Hill and the track and field complex. I think that it's more incumbent upon you to just report the facts. I think you have to be a partner in that leadership of helping us to determine what those are and how to go out and corral those resources and bring those projects, to some semblance of decisiveness and completion. But that's the only comment that comes to mind right now.
I would just say that we don't have on here anything about moving your offices out of
Yeah.
TCP.
I was thinking the same
I
thing.
mean,
You can
that's,
connect it a little bit
you
more
don't
to our
have to,
goals
but I mean,
potentially.
if we're connecting the goals there, that might be something you wanna put on there, because,
I had the exact same thought,
yeah,
Yeah.
that it's
because
an important
you
goal.
cannot stay there,
And
Yeah.
I
so.
think it also has to go with.
Mr.
I don't know where
Scullin-Brady?
you're gonna go,
Yeah.
but.
Adding something about finding a new landing spot for central office is important, because it's gonna play into all of the plans for Turkey Hill, and it will play into plans for other buildings in town. If the plan is to rehab the River Building and put you guys there, then, what are we gonna do in the meantime? I think that we've gotta slow it down.
Thank you. I would just say, and I think this comes up a lot of times talking about goals, whether it's teacher goals, superintendent goals, or even the admin, is set your goals to what you're going to do for that year. And I think you did that really well here. It's like, this is what we wanted to do. it's a great goal that's aligned to what we actually want to do in the next year or two. So, thank you.
Thank you all for your input.
Ms. Brzezowski?
I really liked the mention of calendar mapping when it came to the job documentation. I think that's very smart, especially considering the cyclical nature of a lot of jobs. Why is this rolling in? So I really like that, and the documentation of roles. I think that's important, especially how vital some of those positions are. I wanted to ask about cross-training, especially for some of the secretarial roles in your office, because some of those people are holders of very important information.
Yep, so I've been trying to cross-train for 6 years.
How is it going?
Not well.
Because it requires time.
Because it requires time,
Yes.
and because the people with these key roles are so out straight busy to keep up with, oh, nope, this needs to be done, it needs to be ready for a school committee meeting, oh, we need to submit to the state by this deadline. That it's really hard to carve out time for people to sit together and show each other how to do the different pieces. There is a little bit that's happening, but not in like a substantial enough way that, oh, if somebody we were notified tomorrow needed to be out for 6 weeks, that's okay, we've got it. This person knows how to do all of that. We don't have it to that level. But we do have bits and pieces that people could tag in on. So I would say that the best backup is this mapping out of all of the roles and responsibilities. I can tell you that we've even attempted to plan for some of this training to happen during school vacation weeks when we're not being flooded with emails and phone calls all day long. And inevitably, something happens in the employee's world outside of work that now takes that off the table because they can't be in the office, they have to take care of something else that's popped up. But it's still something that we try to work on.
Yeah, I might add something in there about that as far as, it's hard to do, I know, because of the
Yeah.
time. But some of those staff they have very vital key roles and hold a lot of information. And
Documentation is the first
Yep.
step, though. I mean,
Yeah.
back to my comment about reflecting our conversation, I had brought up this whole, topic in terms of just sort of operational resiliency, right? And, how do we get past what seems like a lot of reaction when things go wrong and the unanticipated and inevitably happens that we should anticipate the unanticipated. I think that this, represents really sound thinking in terms of,
Right.
okay, how can we take steps in that direction? We can't solve that problem in a year or two, but we can take steps to be more resilient.
And, for district improvement goal 2, I would recommend adding Passios to that as well for moving you. I'd like to make it a stated goal, everywhere. Where it says water testing results, does that plan just for reporting the water testing results, or
So
is it?
those are some of the things that, happen annually. And I think, we do have that information posted on the website, but that's a perfect example of a report that needs to be done and needs to be posted and made available. So it should live where all of these other reports live on the
Okay.
website.
But no additional plan to do anything?
No, we have a plan in place
Yeah.
where we did our initial testing, I think, in 2018. And the plan is to do samples 1/3 of all fixtures, I guess is the best way to describe it, 1/3 every year. With the thinking that by 3 years, you've gone through everything again. And that is information that's part of what's documented, so.
And my other concern, under the professional practice goal, the use of the word disruptor.
I love that.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the phrase that we actually learned from our consultant that we worked with all of last year, that worked with the staff. Taking this mindset that you want to disrupt when you see harassment going on.
Okay, so this ties into like
microaggression, yes.
the training on
Yes.
Election Day.
Yes.
Okay.
So last year, Dr. Warnham came in 3 different times and was a keynote for the entire staff. She talked about several different things over those 3 visits, but one of them was about microaggressions, recognizing them, and how to come to disrupting that with a sense of curiosity. You come to the situation with curiosity to understand, but calling it out at the same time. So that's work that really staff need to get to practice over time so that it becomes sort of a natural thing that you do. So we know that we want to get to that place where we continue that work with Dr. Warner. There were staff that really wanted to be able to continue with her as well.
Okay. And my other thing is just the first goal. Is that focused on MCAS scores?
So there aren't any MCAS scores at the primary level.
Yep.
So we would be looking at other data points, which is why there's no specific, at the district level, there's no specific measure that we're talking about this time, this goal. It's gonna be more dictated by grade level. So last 2 years, we had a district-wide goal that could be written in a way that teachers could take the goal, administrators at the building level could take the goal, and the district level could take the goal. The way the district goal was designed this year, it needed to be, the goal itself, the phrasing of it needed to be tailored for the teacher level, the building admin level, and the central office level. But we'll be looking for evidence that we're moving the needle through a variety of measures, most of which, were articulated in the teacher goal or in the school improvement plans.
Any other questions or comments? Again, if you think of anything later too, as Dr. Burnham said, you can reach out to her. We're
Sorry.
not taking any action.
Can I just,
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about the district, about the first goal, because it focuses on a narrow subset of students and narrow metrics. We're talking about test scores and not like overall special education experience.
So we're letting the data guide this work, the data that I've provided, and there are other ways that we've looked at data. That's an area that the gap is significant in places, and it needs to be focused on. And when you think about, it's a small subset, it's still a significant number of students when you look at the whole district.
Yeah, it's 214 or 260, which one was it? Desi
How
had
many,
two numbers.
how many do we have on an IP right now?
Okay. Yeah, Desi said 261, but then somewhere else it said 214, and I couldn't figure
It
out.
all depends on when Heidi runs the reports for the October 1st versus June versus March.
Okay.
And so-
That, I just want to reassure you, that does not mean that the work we had been doing, trying to move more students to on grade level and fewer students in that tier 3 category with all the work that we have been doing for the last 2 years, that work is still ongoing. It's just not a focused goal. We need to do work on this particular
Oh, yeah,
area.
I know. It's just last year in the budget discussion, we spent a lot of time when discussing budget priorities in a tough budget season, focusing on exactly what the district goals were. So,
This is still
this one-
meeting the needs of all students. We're
Yes.
just looking to use this as a measure.
But it's also a student learning goal, not the professional practice goal.
Correct.
yeah.
Right.
Again, we look at the data for all students all year long. We are still doing the benchmarks, we're still assessing all of that data. Teachers are still interpreting that data, we're still doing interventions and flexible grouping. So that work, while it's not in a stated goal, that work is still a priority focus. And it is happening. And it will continue to happen.
Other questions or comments?
Again, I'd like to thank each of you for your time spent with me and my team at central office this summer, sharing your thoughts around what the priority areas might look like for the next year or two. It was very helpful.
Yeah, so we'll keep this on the agenda for next meeting. Next item on the agenda is old business, the discussion on Power School new IEP implementation.
So you have an update from Juliana Hanscom, our Director of Special Services. I'd invite Juliana to come up in case you have any questions or comments relative to the new IEP implementation.
I dropped the memo into the folder for you guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's been going as expected, with some bumps in the road here and there. But for the most part, the staff has been amazing with taking on this new IEP, as well as Power School changeover with Frontline. You know, I've put some things in place as far as I have a spreadsheet that I have an alarm on my phone that Kate's heard go off multiple times, 3 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, I check that spreadsheet every day to see if they've uploaded any new questions for Power School. Sometimes I'll even check it during the school day so that I can get back to them right away and try to find the answers for them. But they've got that resource, and like I put here too, I've also got a listserv group for the state of directors that we're asking each other Power School questions for those of us who have, because a lot of districts have transferred over to Power School. Frontline's lost a lot of business this year. Because they didn't have things in place. So it's kind of good that a lot of us jumped ship because we're all in the same boat and we're learning from each other. Because Power School doesn't have the greatest user-friendly professional development platform. You would expect that they would have a lot of videos online to be able to look at, and it's just not, it's not meshing well. But we're learning a lot of things together. We have had a couple of trainings that we've done online. One was just yesterday. We're going to be doing some more. And I will say Laureen in my office has been fantastic. Her and Emily, both in my office, they've like jumped right in. They're looking for answers as well and helping staff to meet them where they're needed. And with the new IEP too, even those, it's been a really good changeover for the new IEP. I think it's a much better document, I think, than the old IEP. I think it's much more user-friendly for people looking at it and even for staff to look at it and to understand what's needed for students. It's got a lot more student voice in it that we've talked about before. I'm very happy with how things are. It's not perfect, but we didn't expect it to be perfect. And I think we're in the throes right now of just, as it comes along, we're working on it and we're moving forward with it. The great thing is for parents, we've been able to change over to that digital signature. So now parents will get that consent form via email, they can sign it, send it back, which is a little scary, because when you send out a bunch of consents and then you get them all back at once, that means that the school psychs have to put it in gear for testing and the special ed staff have to put it in gear for testing then. But that's okay. It shows that it appears to be that we're meeting parents where it's most comfortable for them, because they're signing things digitally and sending them back much faster than what we did. And even one, I will say, we sent an IEP out and Maureen was like, this is typically a family, we might have to send it again, because usually with this family, it's a couple of times, that's fine. That same day, we got it back digitally signed. And I was like, Merry Christmas, this is fantastic. Because we want to be able to put services in place as soon as possible. So I think all in all, the changeover has been going as well as can be expected. And then I really want to thank the principals too for helping free up staff as needed for them to be able to work with me and to get, come to the professional development too.
Takes me weeks to put a stamp on an envelope, but I can sign digitally in seconds.
Yeah. We're even having the principals
We should have been able to
sign
do
it.
this years ago,
Yeah.
but the fact that we're doing it now is great.
Yep, even the principals are signing the IEP, so it's not the staff having to chase down the principals for that signature or
Yeah.
the IEPs to wait on the principals' desks for them to get to it at the end. We comes up to the central office, we process it, we edit it as best we can, and then we send it to the principals for their digital signature too, so they can even do that as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's been great, and the interpretation or translation too we've been able to do through PowerSchool. That's not as seamless as I hope, but I'm hoping that as we get better with it, that we'll be able to continue to utilize PowerSchool translation rather than having to send it out to an outside agency and have them translate it and send it back and wait.
When you mean translate, you mean literally translate language?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
I thought it was an input thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you find the length of the meetings? Have you found that is too early to tell, or?
I think it's still a little early to tell. I can tell you the advice that I've given my staff, because I actually had the first 2 district meetings of the year at the end of summer for my out-of-district students, 2 of my out-of-district students. And what I found is the out-of-district placements had draft IEPs, and it went much faster with a draft IEP. Rather than just talking about it, but for parents to actually have that draft IEP in front of them. So I've talked to PacSal, I've talked to Sherry Cordella, who's our PacSal chair. I'm going to be bringing it up again next month at our PacSal meeting in November, again, about how with parents, I've asked staff to try to do draft IEPs whenever they can, and I've relayed my experiences on how that's beneficial. But I also don't want parents to think that we're predetermining anything by drafting an IEP. We're just trying to put some information into it that we already know or that might be left over from the last IEP for them to be able to see it and then move forward. So I'm going to continue to relay that information, that it's real. Our intent isn't to predetermine. Parents still have a voice at that meeting. We can still change things up, but I think it really does help lessen the length of that meeting. But I think more involved meetings are still going to take that time. I think it is going to take more time than a normal meeting did, but we're trying to put some things in place that we think might help.
Other questions?
Was the changeover from Frontline to PowerSchool, was it automated, or did you have to manually input every IEP?
We didn't have to manually input we will have to manually input every IEP.
Eventually.
What Frontline did for us, what we were able to get from Frontline is we were able to download them as PDFs. And then from there, we were able to upload those PDFs to PowerSchool. So now what staff has to do is they have to open up that old PDF, make a new IEP, and then they have to copy and paste with the relevant sections. There's not many relevant sections in the old IEP, so they would have to do the new part anyways, which is why we thought it was good to do the change this time to PowerSchool, because they were going to have to rewrite the IEP anyways, whether it was Frontline or PowerSchool. But yeah, a lot of it was I know our IT department, Emily and Jordan, worked tirelessly on putting together the spreadsheets and all of the data fields that Power School asked for. There was some glitches on that. Laureen spent one full day. I said, go work on just entering in the data that needs to get entered in. Because we have enough students. We're not Boston Public, we're not Worcester. So we have enough to where we had to enter in some data. And Laureen was able to do it for the 200 and something students because it was a small enough group.
It's not 20,000.
It's not, right. So as long as she was uninterrupted, she was able to enter in. It was like the disability information. We weren't finding a way to transfer it over easily, and finally I said, peace out, let's just enter it in manually the old-fashioned way. So there have been glitches on that. We expected it. There are some things that I wish Power School were like, come on, why can't you do it this way? And they couldn't, and so we figured it out, and we'll continue to figure it out as best we can.
And the demands on your time as far as the new IEP meetings, have you guys been, is it too much, or is it?
It's no more than what I would have expected.
Okay.
And I think as the year moves along, you know, if I need to go to more meetings to help facilitate that, I will. It is what it is. But I can say the staff has been so overwhelmingly positive about this changeover. I would like to say that I would expect it, but I also, I thought about, you know, when I was a teacher, if I was going through all of this, I'd be out of my mind. And maybe they are and they're just not telling me, which, you know, tell me if you're out there and you're hearing and you need help, support. I'm here to support them, and Lorraine's there and Emily's there to support them too. But they've really been positive overall, and that's just so great, because it really is the best thing, I think, for the students to be able to get on board with this new, like I said, the new IEP, much more student voice in the new IEP.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. This is just a discussion, so no action needed. Next item on the agenda is a discussion on strategy for continuous improvement.
So I did review the status, I guess, of our strategy and the action plans that were in place a year ago with my leadership team, looking for input. And we felt that the work that we needed to continue to do did still fall under this cultivating culture and climate umbrella, and still fell within either priority 1, 2, or 3. We had a conversation late last spring about the need to revisit the core values when I gave an update. And I am happy to say that we have been able to partner with Dr. Warnham to facilitate the work on the core values. So we've had conversations with her about what that process is going to look like, and it'll be a little bit organic as we move through the process. But she was highly embraced by our staff when she came in those 3 days last year. So I think she's a really great person to facilitate the conversations, particularly with staff. So that's good news, that we'll be able to focus all of our time on budget and not having members of the school committee trying to facilitate the conversations around core values like we talked about.
Right.
May need to be the case last spring.
So how does that actually come to fruition? Like, does that ultimately get reported out to us at some point, or?
I'll invite Dr. Bookus up to the table. We've been back and forth with Dr. Warnham on what this process can and may look like. Initially, we're going to start with the leadership and then work our way out from there. But I'll let Dr. Bookus talk about what Dr. Warnham had to say.
Yes, and we'll start with a small group. It'll be our instructional leadership team. She has some homework for us to do, some thinking and some writing to do. She'll help us draft a statement together about what the work means, what that actually looks like, what's important to us. And then be able to put some sort of action items to that. So it's one thing to have a statement, it's another thing to actually live and breathe it every day, so that we all become, sort of comfortable with that language. And then we'll be able to broaden out the group a little bit, so be able to invite other folks into the conversation. Director of facilities, Director of food services, other folks who are working within us tangentially, and then also being able to bring in our staff, being able to bring that work then back to the schools. So it's one thing to, what does it look like in our work, but what does it look like in the schools? What does it look like and how does it live and breathe in the classrooms? Making sure we're getting input from our staff and our educators as well. Then also broadening that out to school committee members, other constituent groups, families, community members. So it's something that lives and breathes throughout the entire community. But again, starting small and then continuing to branch out that way so we can all have a deeper understanding of the work. Thank you.
So I don't know if anyone has any other questions or concerns about what we've mapped out as our continued focused work for the next year. In some cases, ongoing.
For
Any
the
questions, comments? Mr. Brzezowski?
For the core values, I think because those will inform so many decisions that the school committee makes, it's my opinion that we probably should be more of a part of that.
You will be.
Just because I have a feeling the core values are gonna really come into play when it comes to making decisions, budgetary policy, and all of that. But I am excited that that is on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if this is done in a way that follows best practices and involves the right people, I think we're gonna get some very reflective, well thought out topics, ideas, proposals that'll be brought to us, and we can discuss them to our heart's content at that time. But I'd prefer that somebody else do the groundwork. I guess is what I'm thinking at this point, given the limitations of our time. you know?
I would agree too, and I think it's also having the experts in the field
Yeah,
put
Right.
that work in.
We're
And-
not-
and- Yeah,
We're not the feet on the ground,
yeah, exactly.
and,
I would agree.
and we don't have the pulse.
just one reflection though that did come to mind when you were talking about that is that you have some core people that are new, and when this finally kicks off, you'll have at least 3 of your major leaders who've been around for 6 months or less, and so I think that is important, that it's a well-balanced team that reflects as many folks who've been around a long time and kind of know, are well healed in the history of why some things are the way they are, as a way to project where we want to be.
Yeah, I think diversity will be key.
Yeah.
So this is just a discussion item, and I would assume similar to the other item, that you
We bring it back at
feedback
the next
At the
meeting
next
for
meeting.
approval.
Yeah.
If you have any thoughts or questions before then, you can
Reach
send
out to
them
you.
my way.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the discussion on school committee goals. So again, still discussion. I'm thinking maybe we could do an action item in the future, but we were working on some drafts. So in your folder, you should have school committee goal draft 1, 2, and 3. So I'll open it up to discussion. We can also read through them too for the public's sake if we want. So there was some edits. If we want to go goal 1, There was the edit on action steps, work collaboratively with staff unions through collective bargaining, administrators, parents, students and community members, as well as town partners, including select board, finance committee, and town manager, to create a fiscally responsible budget and support sustainability and long-term planning. Also, we added the action step, review and revise fees, including but not limited to facility rentals, student activities, and athletics. Any discussion on goal 1? Financial sustainability and efficiency.
I think it's there. I think we got it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great. All right, moving on, goal number 2, facilities and capital planning. The objective, develop a comprehensive plan that focuses on the maintenance as well as future needs of school buildings and athletic fields, and ensuring safety and sustainability through capital planning, budgeting, policy development, and potential long-term project proposals that may involve long-term borrowing. Also, under action steps, we had develop a long-term facilities plan that addresses the district's needs with special attention given to school administration offices, Turkey Hill School, and the turf field. So those are just some of the edits. So I was gonna read through the whole thing.
Can we add the track, or does turf field include?
turf field.
Turf field will include
That's
that.
The track and the, okay. Just because in the budget part, as far as the capital plan and what it was addressing, it didn't include the turf field.
No, I think that looks good.
Any other discussion on goal 2?
So as I'm reading.
Hold on, Mr. Scullenbrady, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Scullenbrady.
Do we want to incorporate something about applying for grants for air conditioning? Is that too specific?
So I think the grants would be more of the administration. I don't know if that makes sense, Dr. Brown?
Okay.
I think they're gonna be the ones seeking out the grants, if that makes sense?
And it's actually the Green Committee that submits the grant.
Oh.
We're just
Community,
providing
yeah.
them.
For the green community stuff.
For the
Right.
green
For that grant,
community
yeah.
stuff, yeah.
Mr. Beardmore?
I would like to pick up on Laura's note. I think we should add maybe the word complex to turf field, because we are talking about the infrastructure around the field and potentially the track as well. From speaking.
Can't hurt,
Yeah.
yeah. Turf
Uh-huh.
field.
But otherwise, I think you captured it.
Turf field complex?
Yeah.
We'll make that change. Any other discussion on goal 2?
No, I think it's good.
All right, seeing none. Goal 3?
Very comprehensive.
We didn't have any changes on that one. That was the transparent, efficient, and effective communication. Or maybe, no, this was I sent you this to put in the folder, right?
This was.
So we haven't looked at this yet. So this is, I think, some revisions. The whole thing is a whole rewrite, I guess, or potential rewrite. So goal 3, transparent, efficient, and effective communication. Objective, to improve communication by reviewing and revising policies and/or protocols that enhance transparency, efficiency, and effectiveness between the school committee, superintendent, and the public. Action steps, policy and protocol review, workshop and revised communication, policies and/or protocols focusing on increasing efficiency, reducing misinformation, and fostering transparency. Benchmark successful implementation of the new communication policies and/or protocols. Any discussion, comments?
I think that's gonna be a tall order. I mean, I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Landing that before the end of the school
Yeah,
year is gonna
landing
be,
it is gonna be-
tough sledding, but I
think
think
it's-
it's an ambitious goal that we should adopt.
I think
I
it's
think
something
we
we can
should
make
try it,
progress
yeah.
on, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get somewhere.
Yeah.
And somewhere is better than nowhere.
Exactly, yeah.
Alright. Good. All right, so we'll put this on an action item for next agenda then.
Okay?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is reports. So we can just go down the line.
Start here or start there?
Start at the
I
end.
got
or-
nothing.
Capital Planning Committee met to hear a presentation from Acting Chief Thibodeau. He was Lieutenant Thibodeau at the time. I believe he's Acting Chief as of tomorrow, I guess, or Friday.
Uh-huh.
But we met last week and heard the police department presentation, and we will be meeting on Monday and Wednesday of next week. School department is one of those 2 days. Monday. And the town manager screening committee met and adopted the community profile and posting for the position, which is now posted, and applications are open. They will be open, I believe, for a total of 3 or 4 weeks, so more or less throughout the month of October, closing in early November, and we are scheduled to begin interviews in December. And the high school advisory committee is meeting tomorrow.
Okay. The middle school advisory committee met yesterday, and much of which you have already heard about MCAS results and school improvement plan. There was quite a discussion about the Washington DC trip and the question of whether or not it is equitable and what to do about that problem, because the cost of the trip has gone, I think what they're anticipating is like $1,400. And that's a lot of money. And so there was a lot of discussion about the need to do the trip for a lot of reasons, but the need to perhaps start fundraising, like when the kids are in the 6th grade or something, you know, to work towards that goal, to find a way to make this more equitable. The PTO is willing to help out. There was some discussion about maybe changing the trip. Somebody suggested New York City. I think that's going to be just as expensive. So there was a lot of discussion about it. So as we have discussed, and particularly Peter, the equity in these kinds of projects, that I was pleased to see that topic was taken on by the school council. There was no decision, but discussion. The parent-teacher conference, they were fooling around with trying to figure out a consensus on perhaps a different format. They know that it's important to offer a Zoom, you know, possibility, as parents have trouble getting in and out, but he said he didn't have any consensus on any other format at this time. And that's what we talked about there. FinCom, I watched the video today because I was away, and so I didn't write it out nice like I normally do, so my apologies. Obviously, everybody knows that the chair has resigned. Chris Menard was voted as the chair, the new chair, Jean Russell, the vice chair, Tom Gray, the clerk. They are down people, so anybody out there, you want to play that game, go to FinCom, learn all about the town. It's a great education. I've never served on it, but I've been there, and I've learned a lot about the town. So if you're thinking about doing that, do it. The next meeting will have a parks presentation regarding their warrant article that they are planning on presenting to borrow $5 million for Marshall Park. So that's going to be the presentation. Their public hearing on the warrant articles will also be on the 24th. Very quickly, they asked for what will we use the additional monies for, so we talked about that, that's fine. They're working on the MART program, and they reinforced that they will allow that to go to Emerson. If you need to go to Emerson Hospital, it has been allowed. Article 4 is the prudent investor rule, which could make a huge difference in our school budgets. So that's important. The Article 8, I just tried to do what had to do with us. Article 8, the Architectural Preservation District Commission was talking about what to do with the Brooks House. And they said that discussion would have to move forward in consultation with the schools and others. So that's part of Article 8. Article 9 has to do with the challenge of recruiting and retaining employees on the town side. But I just notate that because obviously they are very serious about they have the same problem that we do. Article 12 was the Budget Task Force and the Municipal Building Committee. We have to vote to allow them to report, which I assume we will allow them to report. They said those would be brief reports, but one never knows. Article 13 is the Marshall Park improvements. And Tom Gray said the same thing you did about Project 211. So, oops, turn the page. No,
It's like
I
the
think I'm
211
done.
schools
Yeah.
that are in the
The-
regional and hold
in-
harmless
yeah.
mix.
Working with that. Though he did say that we were a hold harmless district, which we are not,
Yeah,
but,
we're close, and
but we're close.
I
So,
think we're close enough, and every year we might be.
If they were to raise the floor, we would be. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's one of those deals.
exactly, we're right on the edge.
Can
So
can
that's
I
what
offer
I
just
had.
a comment here?
Of course.
And I want to be careful because to a certain extent, it's not school committee business, but it is a huge concern of mine, is the Parks Department
Mhm.
article.
Mhm.
They are seeking $5 million in regular borrowing. And I've not gotten any of the financial analysis of this, but $5 million of regular borrowing is a lot of money in debt service that is
Yes.
gonna draw from the budget, which is gonna draw from available funds to run programming like programming in the schools. That's number one. But additionally to that, we are capped in terms of our, by fiscal policy that is set by the select board, what our regular borrowing can be. And I believe the cap is 4% of the total levy capacity of the town. And I'm not even sure how that will affect that 4%, but it certainly has me thinking if, let's say, next annual town meeting or not long thereafter, we need to bring forth an article to deal with the track and field facility, which we may be able to fund through a cell tower or some other type of revenue source, we could easily run into a cap in our borrowing capacity if that particular article passes. So I just want to raise that to the, and I intend to attend the hearing next Thursday and let my concerns be heard on that. I think the story on this Marshall Park project has changed dramatically over the course of the last few years, and this has come up rather suddenly, so.
Thank you. Mr. Scullambrini? Do you have any reports?
Yeah, the budget task force met and we talked about what happened because we no longer have Evan as representative from FinCom. I will say, I'm sure if you watched any of them, you understand how incredibly helpful Evan was. Did a lot of work and presented information in a really understandable, digestible way, especially on the idea of split tax base. The other thing that we talked about was the presentation that we hope to be allowed to do to the special town meeting. And to address Carol's point, I will not go over 5 minutes. I want to get this down to 3 minutes. One of the issues that we're looking at that was brought up last meeting had to do with ways to go through the process of reducing expenses on both sides of the ledger by consolidating certain groups and certain functions within the town. So we had a discussion about consolidating IT between the school and the town, consolidating snow removal and ground stuff between the school and the town. Can't remember what the other one was, Dr. Vernon, but the idea basically was that some of these would be really difficult to put into place because like the IT needs are so radically different. We did talk about the possibility of consolidating snow removal and ground stuff, and the conclusion was basically, we can try it, but it's unlikely to save money because of the school's unusual need for snow removal. You know, the town has a different schedule, and because we have people getting in and out of the buildings, and essentially in the middle of the day, it's not the same. So, we also talked about, Brian, we talked about your proposal for the high deductible health insurance plan, and then there was a request for me to reach out to Mary Foyle, who's on the PEC, which is the town's health insurance, and Mary and I had a discussion about what the PEC does and what sort of cost savings measures we could eke out of the town in terms of how we go about doing buyouts of people for town insurance. So if somebody's spouse or significant other has an alternate insurance policy, how we could incentivize them to go into that insurance policy. And this tied into something that Peter and Laura brought up about possibly consolidating the cost of insurance outside of each department's budget. The PEC works across all of the town's departments, and so they have a better handle on what the town's health insurance needs are than any one of the departments, especially outside the school department, because those departments don't have those line items in their budget. But the takeaway that I got from Mary about the PEC was that they function differently than a lot of other towns, and so it might be helpful because they are a binding as opposed to advisory group to listen to their suggestions instead of the ones that ultimately make the decision. And then the last thing was we just talked about points for the presentation, and right now it is just over 1 page. So again, my hope is 3 minutes, but I promise less than 5 minutes.
Thank you.
I forgot I did have one.
You have another one?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The Pascal met here in person for the support group, so there's nothing to report, but I do encourage parents. So Pascal, for this year, every other year, or every other month, we'll do a meeting, and then the in-between months is gonna do a parent support group. So I highly encourage people whose students are on an IEP or 504 to attend, because a lot of valuable information was shared, and it was very supportive. So, and the next one will be in December, and the next Pascal meeting is in November.
Thanks. So the finance committee is at 7 members out of their 7-person committee. We did have someone fill out a talent bank form, so that was exciting. So the finance committee appointing committee will be meeting Tuesday to hopefully appoint Ms. Tanya Dahl, who's a new Lunenburg resident who's interested in getting involved. So that was
Who are the other
exciting.
2 new?
Tourism.
Oh,
It should be ready for Thursday, yeah, hopefully. Next Thursday.
so there's gonna be 7 members?
No,
No,
there'll be
no.
5 potentially. We'll
Oh.
see if we
Still
can get
2
up to
vacancies
7.
after that one,
Yeah, so they're currently at 4 out of the 7, yeah.
which
So it's a
you
little
have to
scary.
have 4.
You need 4
For
just
to
to
have
have
a
a quorum.
meeting.
To have a
Yeah,
meeting.
So they
So
need
they
everybody
all
there.
have to be there.
No pressure.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
That's tough.
And then for the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee, the bids are due on November 4th for the RFP, and then we're meeting again that first and third Monday, so we're meeting this coming Monday. That's all I had.
And I can give you an update on PTO.
Yeah, thanks.
They are, at this point, starting to look for sponsors for their special someone dance. They are in process of putting out their request for funds for teachers to ask for funding for special projects. Their swag sale ends on Friday, so don't forget to get your Lunenburg swag. And they worked on a letter to the school committee from the PTO relative to the roles of the PTO versus the LEAF organization. So I expect there'll be something coming our way soon.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. So I'll open it up to public comment from the public.
Not seeing
All right, seeing none, I'll open up to public comment from the committee.
I forgot to say at the beginning of the meeting, I wanted to say thank you to the fifth grade teachers and the staff, and all the teachers at Turkey Hill for Nature's Classroom. That's a lot of work. It's a terrifying endeavor, to take so many students on, 3 nights away from home. For a lot of them, it was their first overnight ever, and it looks like it went well, and they had a lot of fun, so thank you. And that is a great Lunenburg tradition, and that is one that it takes a lot of effort, a lot of organization, and a lot of work. So, thank you.
I just wanted to echo the thanks to Chief Gamble. He's always been a pleasure to work with. He and I have had a number of difficult conversations over the years about a number of different things, and we've always had a great working and cordial relationship despite some difficult conversations. And I personally am going to miss him and his sense of community and teamwork and dedication to all things Lunenburg, including our schools, for all the reasons that you outlined earlier. He'll be sorely missed. And to Evan Waters, you guys know I stepped down from the chair of the Finance Committee a little over 2 years ago to take this seat. And Evan stepped up, and he's done a stellar job, and also will be sorely missed in that capacity.
Thank you. I would also echo, I had talked about the chief already, but I didn't say anything about Evan, so I do want to say that Evan Waters is a great supporter of the Lunenburg Public Schools and with the override, and just he did an amazing job being the finance chair and also a supporter of the school, so thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Scullin-Brady?
I wanted to just say this, my son is in ninth grade for the first time, hopefully the only time this year, and he is participating in float, and I just cannot get over how great of an experience it is for all the kids from, different social groups and different parts of the school to come together and work on float, and it would not be possible without the teachers and others that donate their time and their beloved garages and barns to allow kids to do this. I don't know what sort of class or field of knowledge it supports, but having kids work together on a project and learn how to do stuff with tools and, have a final result is just the best. So I wanted to thank all of the parents and families that donated their time, and all of the teachers that offered help as class advisors, and go freshmen.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is topics for future discussions. Anything else to add for future agendas? Feel free to reach out to me or Dr. Burnham too if you have additional thoughts.
I thought we were gonna put our communication stuff on.
That will be in the future agenda, but not on this one, yeah. Any other topics for future discussion? Otherwise,
Motion to adjourn at, I can't read that.
9:38.
9:38 p.m.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Scullin-Brady? Mrs. Brzezowski?
Yes.
Mr. Beardmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Ashambo?
Yes.
And Mr. Leighton?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.